That time, an American was reincarnated into another world. By Spade. Chapter 1. Killer Truck. John Cooper was playing his favorite game. Surrounded by his posters, football gear, and two small stands holding two different rings, his eyes reflected rapidly shifting scenes of wanton violence. Rockets flew and miniguns sprayed, painting the world within his screen red with blood. His father liked to call things like this good old-fashioned American violence. Not that it meant anything to John. It was just a game he liked. A few months later, he might swap to another. Ding ding! An alarm went off at some point during the day, pulling his attention away from the visceral gameplay. Oh, it's time. He rose from his seat with visible excitement and nervousness, gathering some gear and packing the car. Before long, he was on his way to his destination. It happened as he was out driving. John spotted a large semi-truck, a long boxy trailer hitched behind. As he rolled to a stop at a red light, he shifted into neutral. The light was taking too damn long, his thoughts drifting to other places. I've seen some of those European and Japanese trucks. Why are they so puny compared to ours? Although, considering Texas is damn near the size of Europe, I can see why. Bigger places beget bigger trucks. He hummed, satisfied with his logic, while watching the semi barrel toward the intersection. Something was wrong. It was going way too fast. Shit, is that thing gonna stop? He panicked, fumbling to slam his gear shift into drive. The truck barreled through 5 cars, twisted metal and shattered glass doing little to halt its momentum. Oh shit, it's not gonna stop! He cursed as he watched the truck turn toward him. The roar of its engine overwhelmed him. He couldn't evade. And then, it happened. Metal contorted and twisted as the truck warped into a robot, the scent of motor oil and gasoline engulfing John's senses while it roared. It's isekai time, motherfucker! John watched as the semi-truck robot jumped high into the air and went into a diving elbow drop, as if it were some kind of pro wrestler. He sat there, baffled. What the fuck? 100 tons of metal crushed him, and everything went dark. Chapter 2. First Job. Gah! I couldn't help but scream as I leapt from the floor, fully expecting a mangled block of flesh to be all that was left of my body. A quick self-assessment determined my body was perfectly fine despite my mind thinking otherwise. My breathing was rough as I looked around. The longer I looked, the more I found my new surroundings to be both soothing and unsettling. Rolling grasslands sprawled as far as my eye could see. It was a bright, sunny day with a cool, calming breeze. But I still didn't know where I was. Combined with the shocking experience with the robot truck, I wasn't exactly in the right frame of mind. I slowly reassessed my condition, finding nothing new. I was just as healthy as ever. In fact, I felt better, as if I had been rejuvenated. Just as I was finally feeling calm, A burning heat seared the back of my hand. Ah! Damn! I clutched my wrist and saw a ring of 13 stars, still raw around the edges, tattooed into the back of my right hand. Huh. These stars, they're kinda like the Betsy Ross flag. I guess it's not the worst tattoo to get, but damn did that hurt. I rubbed the ring of stars. The previously piercing pain had faded to a dull throbbing. But this still doesn't help me. Where the hell am I? There was still nothing but grassland. I didn't know where I was or how the hell I got here. After a while, though, I just started walking. I eventually started following a small river winding its way through golden plains. For almost 2 hours, there was nothing but the sound of water, wind, and my own thoughts to accompany me. But as I crested a hill, I finally saw signs of civilization. City! Town! Village? I jumped when I saw the structures in the distance. Before me was not a concrete jungle nor the nicely ordered homes of my hometown suburb, but a scattering of houses around a central few buildings. There was also farmland, and I could see people moving about. But it was a village, which worried me. Where on earth did villages still exist? I guess if it's Ohio or something where all of 3.5 people live, that would make sense. But how did I get to Ohio? I mumbled while walking toward the village. But the closer I got, the stranger things got. The houses were not made of brick masonry, but uneven stones pasted together with clay or some other binder. The citizens were dressed in bright but rough clothes, almost medieval in appearance. The well next to the center buildings actually had people drawing water from it. Amish? With a strange smile, I walked into the limits of the village. Many townspeople stared at the outsider in their midst, curious and apprehensiveness warring in their painfully transparent gazes. I was like some kind of exotic animal that they were all wary of. And at least they weren't speaking Spanish or something. I could understand them fine despite their unfamiliar accents. Hey, you. I reached out and tapped a man's shoulder who was passing by with averted eyes and hurried steps. He did a little hop and turned around, caution written all over his face. I rolled my eyes, thinking he was just a condescending ass. Can you tell me where this is? Like, what state and city? I must go. He had a strange smile as he dodged my question and walked away. Dude, seriously? I thought the Amish were nice. Whatever. I sighed before walking further in. And after catching enough attention, I was finally approached by a tall man with a full beard. He seemed like someone who carried authority, so I smiled in relief. Hello, sir. Greetings, traveler. What brings you to this humble village? I'm lost. I scratched my head. Can you tell me what state we're in? State? Yeah, or city? I'm sorry, but the nearest city isn't for a few dozen miles. To the north, you'll find the city of Halesburg. Halesburg? Where am I? In Europe? Never mind. Do you have a phone I can use? I lost mine. A phone? He looked at me with a dumb face, and suddenly I was a bit more skeptical about my situation. I narrowed my eyes. Hey, what year is it? I believe the calendar year is 622, dear traveler. 622? Ah, shit! I remembered the words of that insane robot truck. Did I seriously? Damn it! What the hell is this? Fucking... Hey, what the hell is this, anyway? I suddenly brought up the back of my right hand and pushed it to the guy's face. He took a moment to notice the ring of stars on my hand, panicked by the sudden movement. Then, his eyes bulged. Oh, esteemed Magus, forgive my rudeness. He dropped to his knees, bowed over at the waist, and surrounding villagers hastened to do the same. The hell? What are you doing? I'm terribly sorry for not realizing sooner, great Magus. What the hell is a Magus? I'm sorry? He raised his head, seeing my irked face. I'm asking what the hell a Magus is. A Magus is one who has been blessed by the Holy Ghost. That crest is the sign of your blessing, and it grants you special power. Oh? What special power? I don't know, great Magus. You may be a knight, a warlock, or a summoner. I don't know enough to tell you more. Is that right? So I've been brought to a primitive magical fairyland. Fantastic. I sighed, taking stock of the situation again. I was seriously murdered by a robot semi-truck and dropped into this world. A place where I had no friends, no family, not so much as an acquaintance beside this man who was probably the village chief. I was all alone in a world that I hadn't the slightest clue about. The only thing that gave me any reassurance was this crest on my hand. If I figured out how to use it... The reality hit me, and for a long moment I processed it. After a stretched silence, I closed my eyes. Fuck it. It is what it is. Hey, village chief. Yes? The man rose to his feet cautiously. I spoke with a deadpan face. How do I get to the city? It was 3 days later that I realized I may have misspoken. When I had said city, I meant the nearest city, but apparently the village chief thought I meant the damn capital city at the center of whatever kingdom we were in. Well, at least travel was fast. Besides the crest, it was the village chief who introduced me to the first fantastical thing that confirmed this wasn't Earth. Our rides to the city were on giant lizards with saddles on their backs. These things could move almost as fast as a car, and they were more than capable of carrying cargo. With only some essentials, the village chief and I each jumped on Lizard and crawled off. Later, rather than sooner, we arrived at the city. It was something else. I thought it was going to be a run-down stone forest with dull gray colors and primitive living conditions. But It seemed this magic shit was more prevalent than I thought. There was a single giant tower that stood in the center of the city, soaring hundreds of meters into the clouds. There was a magic tower no matter how I looked at it. A body of night blue stone, pulsing with veins of energy, and a capstone of radiant crystal. A sprawling palace complex of marble and gold, flanked by smaller but still impressive towers, covered another large portion of the city, its shining splendor illuminating even the furthest slums. That was probably where the kingdom's royalty resided. It was called the Kingdom of Dragon's Tongue, and according to the village chief, this was the best magic city and only kingdom in the world. Of course, living in a village constrained his worldview, so I wasn't sure how valid that statement was. Still, everything was new to me. I didn't really care. If anything, I was enraptured by the mystical sights and atmosphere of the city. We stopped on the outskirts of the city where the wall was, touching down outside the gate where a river of people flowed through a massive gate. I let the chief talk for me, hanging back a little while he walked up to a pair of alert guards in a checkpoint building. "Good sirs, I have come with a guest with no citizenship. He would like to apply. Temporary visas are 50 coin, and you must go to customs to apply for citizenship." "Here." The chief paid the 50 coin, getting a thin card in return. He pressed it into my palm. "Keep it safe." We entered the city. I glanced at the man who led me. "I'll pay you back once I get my hands on some money." "Oh, no worries at all, John." He waved, flustered. Honestly, the only reason I was letting him do anything for me was because I had nothing to my name and nowhere to go. I was in a desperate situation, so I could only leech off this man's kindness. But I wasn't going to let this go without reimbursement. His goodwill would be repaid someday. "So, you said I should enter the magisterium?" "Yes. There you'll be able to find a path in life, one that hinges on your crest. It's the most prestigious institution in the kingdom that accepts just about every magus, at least for the first year." I had been briefed on this magisterium, essentially a magic college. It was a place that taught magic to all three types of magi. It taught the warlocks how to spellcast, the summoners how to summon, and the knights how to fight. But, of course, it did all this for a reason. And that was to fight the existential threat of the world. They were the Scourge, a non-human race of humanoids and beasts that sought nothing but the destruction of humanity. Humanity had been at war with them for hundreds of years, but year after year the battles only got worse, and the contenders only got stronger. The Kingdom of Dragon's Tongue, being the only kingdom throughout these lands, was the only one that fought the Scourge. It seemed that this kingdom was the last bastion of humanity, and any other kingdom was mere legend. So, with the ever-present threat on their doorstep, the Magisterium was the world's leader in churning out powerful magi for the cause, and it would be my first step forward in this crazy world. "You won't be able to join immediately, though. There are about 5 months before the new year starts and entries are accepted."
Huh? So, what do I do for 5 months?
Well, the chief looked around as we walked through the city. There were a lot of shops, and bills didn't pay themselves. I sighed. I guess I better find a job. Don't worry. There's always work to find in this place. I'll stay with you for a few days until you find one, and then I'll need to head back to my village.
Thank you, Chief.
Hey, kid.
My head spun to the right at the sudden shout, my eyes landing on a man who seemed to run one of the shops. He was leaned on a door frame, a wooden toothpick hanging out of the corner of his mouth.
You looking for work?
Depends. I crossed my arms and flicked my head, prompting him to lay out the offer. I'm a delivery man and I need more runners. Pay by commission and easy hours. I'll even give you a starting bonus since you seem to be new here. Huh. What do you think, Chief? I glanced at the chief who was rubbing his beard. Then he shrugged.
It's up to you, John. It's either that or working in a bakery or a store as a counter clerk.
I guess I'll take this then. All right, guy, I accept. I walked over, and as shaking hands seemed to be the symbol it was on Earth, I shook the stranger's hand. He smiled. The name's Plex. John. Come inside, John. I'll show you what we do here. All right. I nodded, but before leaving, I turned back to the chief. I don't think you need to wait for me, Chief.
I may as well stick around for a day or so. It's been a long trip, and the capital is fun to visit. John, if you need anything, find me at the Moonlight Inn.
Right. Thanks, Chief. You've helped me more than you know.
It was nothing, John. Now, go on. You know where to find me.
He waved me off, so I went with Plex into the shop. Thus begun my first job in this new world.
Chapter 3. Drug Runner. Plex walked me into what seemed like a small warehouse. It seemed like a pretty normal warehouse. Racks, boxes, a little clearing with a bulletin board, and a table with some correspondence sprawled over it. It didn't paint a suspicious picture, but that didn't stop the odd feeling from traveling up my spine. My intuition was something I trusted. It wasn't the ultimate tool of prophecy, but it had kept me out of bad situations and away from psycho girls in the past, so I learned to run with it. Plex spoke while motioning around him. This job is rather simple. We receive delivery orders on that board right there. You can choose the jobs you take. Grab the package from the client, give it to the recipient. Collect the designated payment and run it back to the client. And we obviously earn a portion of that money. Yeah, those words definitely didn't reassure the suspicion cramming itself down my throat right now. Was this drug running? Well, only if the products were drugs. Running would be a better descriptor, and would probably also be what I would be doing if it weren't for my empty wallet. Any questions? What if the customer doesn't want to pay? I asked that question, wholly aware of what the answer would be. Plex's face twisted into what could be called a smile, if not for the completely wrong emotion behind his eyes. Well, Those customers only need a bit of persuasion, that's all. They all cough it up at the end of the day. I won't toss you into the wild to fend for yourself, though. You'll shadow me on the first few, just to get an idea. Fuck it. Why not? Might as well try something new. That's the spirit. But first, he looked me up and down. Let's get you a new set of clothes. I don't know where you came from, but those clothes aren't very normal. I chuckled and glanced down again. I'd been wearing a t-shirt and sweats when I died, clothing that definitely didn't exist here. And although the colors were only white and gray, their sterile uniformity still stood out. I definitely wouldn't be so great at running whatever in clothes so unique, so I accepted Plex's offer and went to a nearby shop. It seemed like suit-like attire was common in this world, at least in the cities of this world. Standard dress was pants, long sleeves, a vest, and some hard leather shoes. Thankfully, this world's fashion industry was developed, so I wasn't uncomfortable wearing anything. And I looked decent. Slick, even. I definitely blended with the rest of the populace now. The only thing I wasn't so accustomed to was the pair of gloves that Plex insisted I wore. They were fingerless leather gloves apparently meant to cover my crest. I understood that my crest might not necessarily be something to show off easily, so I agreed and mentally took note to wear them every day from now on. Besides that, I kept my old clothes with me. They were the only memento of Earth that I had now. And after our shopping trip, Plex went and pulled a job off the wall for us. The most challenging thing for you will be learning the layout of the city. You have to know where to go if you want to deliver things, and these jobs need to be completed in a timely manner. We don't like to keep our clients waiting, especially if it's a rush order. Alright, so how should I go about learning? Simple. Through experience. Don't worry, you'll pick everything up over time so long as you stick with the job. Well, I only have 5 months before I plan to enter the magisterium, so until then I'll do my best. Sketchy or not, I had seen what the various jobs on the wall paid, and it seemed like good money. I could earn hundreds of coin per job, and I could complete quite a number in a single day. Of course, if things really did get dangerous, then I planned to leave. I wasn't going to get caught up in some underground war after getting on the bad side of a mob boss. And I had a feeling such a thing was very possible. Alright, go ahead and grab the package. We'll start our first job now. Plex handed me the job paper, and I looked at the package identifier on it. In another part of the warehouse was a series of shelves, each one with various boxes and containers. Some were medium-sized, and others were small enough to be held in a hand. I found the box I needed, a medium-sized wooden crate that needed both arms to carry. After I grabbed it, we both left the warehouse and made our way down the streets. As we walked, I observed my surroundings. Most of the buildings were at least 3 stories tall. The streets were wide, the alleys narrow and dark, and as it was getting to be evening, light posts started glowing with radiance. For a while, the walk was dull. Just another boring street, some residential, others commercial, with restaurants or bakeries. It was nothing I hadn't seen before. But then, Plex led me into a large plaza, and the whole place lit up. Fairy dust here. 2 ivory horns for 300 coin. Handcrafted silver blades made by the Golden Warlock. 10-hour smoked yak meat. Get it fast. It was a plaza full of booths and shops with open walls, with over 1,000 people either hawking their wares or haggling down prices. Floating lights lit up the surroundings as if they were alive, and I could see all the exotic items that were being traded. From grand sets of armor to small animals for pets, it seemed like you could find anything you wanted here. Welcome to the Golden Trading Post. Hundreds of merchants fight to come here and sell their wares, and thousands of people drop many millions of coin here on the weekly. Only when the sun falls does this place come alive. But, of course, the only people who come here are chumps who spend their money on overpriced garbage. Plex snickered, and then he brought me to a shop. It seemed just as busy as all the others, selling all kinds of savory food that made my mouth water. But we didn't come here for food. Instead, upon entering, the shopkeep saw Plex and beamed with a wide smile. Plex, I haven't seen you in a while. I thought you had quit the business. Ha, like that'll ever happen. I was just looking for an apprentice to help me, and I found John here. He pat my shoulder, and the shopkeep looked me over. Back on Earth, I played college sports and was in the prime of my life. At 22 years old, I was over 6 feet tall and proudly chiseled with large muscles. Even Plex was only barely taller than me. In fact, everyone in this world seemed to have a much taller average height, so I didn't stand out much in that arena. But I was still built like a wall, and the shopkeep nodded with approval. He looks strong, and he's a magus, huh? He looked me over, his words confusing me since I had my crest covered by my gloves. How did he know I was a magus? Plex only nodded. That he is, but not a certified one. He'll be joining the Magisterium this upcoming year. I see. Well, John, so long as you're not stupid and know when to respect the right people, you'll keep your head. Don't make yourself an enemy, and you'll remain immune. And who knows, maybe someone will take a liking to you, and you'll get to make a connection. Magi always need friends, and not just in high places. He slapped my shoulder with a toothy grin before waving the two of us to the back of the shop. Head on in, and the next time you come through, just give my name. I'm Chef Black. Thank you, Chef. I gave the guy a smile and nod, and weaving through the store, we came upon a hidden door that led into a dark tunnel. If I still had any doubt in my mind, I didn't anymore. Walking through the dry, dark tunnel made of paved stone, we came upon another door. Plex knocked once, and a hatch opened, revealing a pair of eyes. Gavin. Oh, it's Plex. Who's the new guy? The pair of eyes widened before looking at me. A new recruit. I'm teaching him the ropes. Fun. He hummed before closing the hatch and opening the door. Gavin, a heavy-set man who was taller than even Plex, welcomed us in. Have a safe trip. Always. Plex smiled as he led me in. I couldn't help a wry smile. Music, Lights, hot women, and men with a ring on each finger. The festive yet moody atmosphere, along with the thick scent of heavy alcohol, told me all I needed to know about this place. Where there's light, there's darkness. Welcome to the black market, where there's no rules except the ones you make. Plex laughed and brought me along. As I walked, I saw three things. First, a fight that broke out between two men with broadswords. In only 3 seconds, the fight was decided as one man had his right arm taken off. Second, a store full of caged beasts that were as massive as they were ferocious. Apparently, they could be bought as slave beasts or pets. And third, a brothel with nude women at the doorway and heavy smoke that wafted out, creating a flowing fog at their feet. As the freest market in the city, there's nothing you can't find here. They have everything from slaves to the hardest drugs. They also have the best and most powerful gear a Magus can buy. You'll do good to remember that in the future. The kingdom allows all this? I was quite shocked by it all. Sure, I knew that these places existed, but on Earth it all existed online or behind closed doors that nobody knew existed. But here it was basically out in the open. I could see the night sky above. We seemed to be within an area that was enclosed by the backs of buildings around it. Plex laughed. Allow it? Sure, on paper they abhor this kind of stuff. But there's 2 reasons that nobody touches the black market. 1, because every powerful Magus has a hand in this dark place. And 2, his voice fell. Because the last person to try and destroy this place was murdered in his sleep. You don't fuck with the black market. Yeah. I sighed. This new job of mine was turning out to be interesting. We're here. After walking through many alleyways, we finally approached our destination. Since the box you're carrying is a light package, it was dropped at our delivery center. These jobs are easier since you just need to take them straight to the recipient instead of grabbing the package from the client. Still, we'll need to collect the money, and those who receive light packages that aren't worth much tend to enjoy giving us a hard time. Let's see if this one is one of those people. Plex smiled before knocking on the door to a dark building. Who is it? The door opened, revealing a really skinny girl who looked malnourished. Smoke also bellowed out of the doorway, giving off an incredibly strong odor that made me frown. We have a delivery for Mr. Halley. Oh, hey Halley, the moonshine is here. Finally! The girl yelled, prompting another man to come to the door. I spotted a long pipe in his mouth for smoking, and whatever plant he put into it glowed a silvery white when it was burned. It resembled the radiance of the moon, causing me to narrow my eyes at the box in my hands. I'm a drug runner now. Go ahead and put the box inside. The man waved, but I didn't move anywhere. Plex smiled. I'll need to see the money, if you don't mind. I'll get it. Just put the box inside. Plex was silent, simply standing there with a small smile on his face. It caused the man's face to fall. He snarled and drew a knife, but Plex was right there with him, a short sword appearing in his hand. Let's not make this difficult, friend. Otherwise, I'll take more than just your money. Ass-licking piece of... The man's voice faded as he headed inside. When he came back, he threw a sack at Plex's face. When he caught it, I finally handed off the box. Chapter 4. Fireballs. After another job, I learned that I would be working in the night as a delivery man. The black market operated at all hours of the day, but only at night did the true doors of darkness open. Basically, we delivery men weren't supposed to operate during the day. The daytime was when we received orders, and when night came, we fulfilled them. So my sleep schedule needed to be flipped, which wasn't too difficult of a change. When the second job of my first night was completed, I went to a hotel that Plex recommended me. I paid for 3 days, which cost 30 coin, and fell asleep as soon as I hit the crappy bed. Since I finished the second job only an hour before the sun came up, I didn't wake up until well beyond noon. I didn't have a clock, but my jobs couldn't start until sunset, which was in another few hours. So, in my room, I decided to take a quick look at my crest. After the tattoo was formed on my hand, I hadn't felt anything from it since. 13 stars sitting on my hand and looking pretty. No amount of feeling or meditation activated it. There wasn't some mystical energy that I could feel and control. There was nothing. Right now, it really was just a tattoo. That Magisterium probably knows how to activate it, but that's 5 months away. I'll just need to keep trying and see if anything happens. There's no way this is here for nothing. I refused to believe that I was unable to use my crest, so in that case I just needed time to experiment. The hotel I stayed at had a restaurant, so after getting food to eat, I headed back out to the warehouse. When I arrived, the sun was beginning to set, and inside the warehouse I found not only Plex, but another man. Ah, John, you're early. Yeah? This is Libitus. He's one of our few co-workers. Hello. Libitus waved, and I nodded to him. When I approached, Plex smacked me on my shoulder. Good news. I just got an order from a heavyweight, one of our premium clients. It'll be our first run of the day. After that, I'll come with you on a few more lightweights, see if you can't handle things on your own. I'm fine with delivering, but my biggest issue is still directions. I don't know where anything is. I voiced my most obvious concern. I couldn't learn the layout of the black market or the city in only 2 days. Plex smiled. That's actually why I called Libitus here. He has a map detailing all the information you need to know. Here. The man walked over to a table. I looked over his shoulder as he unfurled a map. Turns out the black market was bigger than I thought. There were actually 2 of such markets that spanned several blocks, and those 2 markets had very specific entry and exit points. The food shop Plex took me through was one such entry point,
and in that market there were only 4 entrances. Libidus explained.
There are 2 markets. The one you went to last night is the Founders Black Market. The market is separated into 4 districts, each owned by 4 heavyweight mafias.
We have a contract with 2 of those mafias that let us handle some of their sensitive cargo. Plex nudged me smugly before Libidus continued.
All our deliveries are marked with the district, the block, the street, and the building number. Most buildings in the market are given a number. Oh, and a little advice. Don't mess around with the unmarked buildings unless you want to get your head taken off. The only reason you go near them is if you have a delivery to one.
Those buildings are almost always owned by the mafias, and if they aren't, then they're owned by someone you really don't want to fuck with, because those guys can fuck with the mafias.
Anyway,
Libidus rolled his eyes at Plex.
just know what district you're in, keep an eye on the block numbers and streets, and you can find your way. Things are pretty orderly in the black market, contrary to popular belief.
Yeah, you don't let savages handle expensive things. Plex chuckled, and after he packed the map, he stuffed it in my arms. Keep it with you and use it when needed, but do me a favor and don't make yourself look like a tourist. It attracts unwanted attention. And speaking of, you'll need this. Plex reached into his coat and grabbed a sheath. It contained a large knife, one that was worn with usage. A simple knife, but good enough so long as you don't get on the bad side of a magus. Just know that nobody wants to get cut, so as long as you don't push a fight, it probably won't happen, and you can get your way. At the end of the day, all you need is payment. Now. Plex looked up toward the roof, seeing a small window that showed the darkening sky. We should get going. I like to please our clients with prompt service. He waved me along, leaving Libidus to grab a few packages and do his own work. We made our way to the golden trading post that was already beginning to surge with activity. When we made it to the restaurant that Chef Black operated, he tossed me a large kebab that held several chunks of savory meat.
Thanks, Chef.
Just watch your back in there. The large man smiled, and we passed through. Our destination was deep inside the black market, specifically one of the 4 corners that was home to the core of our heavyweight client, the Tavera family. They were identified by their saber crest. Most of the members carried an actual saber with special engravings, making them easy to pick out. At first, their territory was crowded with people in business. It seemed nice, like an eternally festive atmosphere of civilized debauchery. But as we got deeper, all that faded rather quickly. Instead, we encountered luxurious buildings and more members who roamed the streets with tasks of their own. Many of the buildings had their interiors completely sealed, but Plex told me that they were home to some of the best products one could buy. Apparently, they also manufactured special drugs, but nobody knew where. Along the way, we ended up being stopped a few times, but Plex's identity got us through every time. It seemed delivery men really were special. And soon, we arrived at the home of the Tavera family.
A large manor with armored guards out front, including rows of tall torches that illuminated a red pathway to the front door. We walked up, and I stopped with Plex outside the front door. Soon enough, the door opened, and we were greeted by a surprisingly beautiful woman. She smiled at Plex, speaking with a soothing voice.
Plex, we appreciate your timely arrival. Of course, Parith. Who is your guest?
Parith looked at me curiously. I kept my cool as best I could and simply smiled. Plex talked for me. This is my apprentice, John. I'm teaching him, so I hope his presence won't be much of a bother.
No, it's not. Come in.
She opened the door and ushered us in. I looked around as my feet hit the stone floor. The entire place was lit up with bright yellow floating lights, casting a warm glow on the gold and red interior. Golden pillars had pictures of warriors and battles depicted on them, and the red floor looked like marble that had been dyed red. 2 staircases went from the center of the room and sloped upward, leading into other halls. Parith led us up one of the stairs and through a hall, coming upon a set of mahogany double doors. After knocking twice, she waited about 4 seconds before opening. What was revealed was a sturdy and a single man who sat behind a massive desk. He lifted his head from the book in front of him, smiling at Plex and giving me a curious glance. Plex, and a guest? Yes, Patriarch Tavera. This is my apprentice. Oh, thinking of retiring soon? The man spoke with a sultry voice, and I observed him as Plex smiled as if embarrassed. The man had a very clean mustache that he occasionally twisted the end of. His hair was slicked back, and his suit was kept prim and proper. Patriarch Tavera turned his gaze from Plex to me. What's your name, boy? John, sir. And you're a Magus? Like previously, he managed to guess my little secret without even seeing the crest on my hand. I nodded. Yes, but I have yet to figure out how to use my power. I plan on enrolling in the Magisterium when they open. Ah, I see. I wish you luck. Let me see your crest. Okay. Slipping off my glove, the Patriarch saw the 13 stars on the back of my hand. He sighed. A summoner, In that case, a difficult road lies in front of you. A summoner? I couldn't help but question confusedly. The Patriarch nodded his head toward my hand. Your crest. Those crests with pointed symbols on them, like stars, triangles, anything with edges, are indicators of a summoner. You're no doubt a summoner. Unfortunately, summoners also have the most difficult time within the Magisterium. They are very often outclassed by the warlocks and knights. The man raised his right hand, revealing a crest of abstract lines, as if it had been slashed by a blade many times. These line crests are the indicators of a knight, which I am. We specialize in bodily enhancement, like speed, strength, endurance, regeneration, and more. My Tavera family is a family of knights, and we often come into conflict with other mafias because of that. And while we're on the topic of other families, I should brief you on your delivery order. The patriarch suddenly opened a drawer of his desk, retrieving a small wooden box. He eyed Plex. This box contains a message for our fiery friends at the Clockwork Institution. The Warlock Mafia? He placed the box on the edge of the desk. Take it to them at this arranged meeting spot, and report back here when all is said and done. Understood. We'll be back before morning comes. Good. And take this deposit, too. Plex grabbed the box, a small slip of paper, and a bag of coin. With that, he stowed them and bowed. As we turned to leave, he spoke once more. Oh, and John... I turned, seeing the patriarch's small smile. Come back and I'll put in a word with the Polaris family. Thank you, patriarch. Although both good and bad feelings rose up within me, I simply nodded and thanked him. After that, Plex and I left the manor of the Tavera family, taking to the streets. Plex sighed as we walked, causing me to voice my concerns. When he said, "Come back," it means this may not be a smooth delivery. He scratched his head. The Clockwork Institution is at odds with the Tavera family, so whatever this message is, if they don't take it well, they may decide to kill us. Of course, we won't sit back and die so easily, and the Patriarch isn't one to screw me over. That's why there's a meeting spot in neutral territory. Still, I don't know if I can fight a bunch of wizards. I mumbled. Warlocks were all spellcasters. If this went south, I expected fireballs to come my way, and I don't know how prepared I was to face that. Plex smacked my back. Hey, don't worry so much. Remember, warlocks take a few seconds to prepare their spells. If these guys really are going to try anything, we have a window to run away. Just don't remain in an open area with them while at a distance. That just makes you a target. Right. I sighed as we continued to take turns down various streets, and finally, we arrived in an unmarked warehouse. It looked incredibly worn down, with foliage hanging across rusted metal walls and broken down infrastructure. We slipped through a destroyed door that was hanging on its hinges, entering what looked like the ruins of a small factory. There were some large machines that hadn't seen the light of day in years, and storage shelves scattered throughout the place. Only in the center was there an open clearing. It was there that we met our wizard friends. 3 of them, all draped in robes, not bothering to hide the symbol of what I assumed was the Clockwork Institution on their chests.
Their symbol was that of gears and interconnected circuits, looking like a complex machine. And each of our contacts were carrying themselves with confidence, not likely to be mere goons of the institution. Plex greeted them with friendliness, as was standard in this line of business. "Hello, my friends from the—" "Where's the message?" He was interrupted by the warlock in the middle, the one who seemed to be the leader with slightly more luxurious robes than the other two. Plex continued to smile while retrieving the wooden box. He handed it off to the one on the right, who opened it before handing it to the leader. The leader looked in the box for a long while, his expression not changing in any way. Instead, he slowly brought out what was inside. A finger with a ring around its severed base. It had long dried, and the sight caused my face to scrunch. "Do you know what this is?" "Sorry, sirs, but we're just the messengers. The details and context of the product delivered are not our concern." "They should be." The leader muttered, his tone falling, and his words causing me to go on guard. Even Plex lost a bit of his friendliness as he asked, "Sirs, the head of the Tavera family would like a response." Jeez. Plex sighed, turning to me with a wry smile. "Sorry, kid. Maybe I should have left you. Let's do our best, okay?" Okay." My heart sunk as I cautiously responded. And before I was able to react, I saw Plex's legs swing out, his foot crashing into my chest with insane force. My body was suspended in the air. As I felt the air rush out of my lungs, I could see a flash of light from the direction of the warlocks. Fireballs, just as I had worried about. They crashed in the place where I was. With Plex's kick, I was safe, my body landed in the midst of storage shelves. Plex also disappeared. Adrenaline shot through my body as I heard the explosion. Not long after, I heard Plex's voice echo amongst the ruined factory. "Get going, kid, and don't stop for anything." "Ah!" I grunted while struggling to breathe. Still, knowing how dangerous things had turned, I crawled to my feet and headed deeper into the ruins. "Get them. Their corpses will be our response to the piece of shit at Tavera." I heard the leader's voice reverberate, and not long after, I saw a light flash through the shelf I was behind. I threw my body, barely avoiding the explosion that toppled the shelf and sent debris flying behind me. "We got this one, sir." "Fine. I'll get the other slippery bastard." "Shit!" I heard those words while scrambling in another direction, cursing inwardly at my luck. It seemed I would need to run away from two wizards. My lungs were still desperately heaving for air as I ran between all the shelves and machines that served as obstacles. I took my time, and only occasionally did a fireball come hurling in my direction. Every time it happened, I was forced to jump out of the way, and a few times I was still hit by debris, my body becoming a bit battered. It only served to wake me up, though. With the help of adrenaline, I felt myself become hyper-aware, every sound and color being used to indicate where the other two wizards were. However, I was only able to tell where one of them was, and that's because he was the one launching the fireballs. The second one, though,
Walking amidst the storage shelves, there was a long period of silence. I kept my steps as quiet as possible, my breathing light, despite how tired I already was. But then, I turned a corner, and I saw a figure. My heart jumped, another surge of adrenaline overcoming me as I saw the robed man wave his hand. Colors bloomed as white lines were drawn in the air before him. His fingers traced the air, creating circuits that traveled between gears which manifested in cyclical formations. It looked like the symbol of the Clockwork Institution. Gears, circuits, symbols, all of them come together in what I only assumed was a spell. And it only took a few seconds before I saw the air distort. In the corner of my eye as well, I could see another flash of light, the sign of another fireball. My avenues were cut off, one in front, one behind.
Chapter 5. First Star. It was the so-called air specialist who was trying to catch me up close. On the contrary, the fireball one kept his distance intentionally. I could only assume that the air specialist had the ability to fight up close. Still, I was running out of energy, so I needed to do something. And I got an idea. I turned a corner, just as I always did. But then I stopped. I turned and looked back to where I knew the air specialist would come. In fact, I even charged back around, my knife in hand and my desperation ready to kill someone. As if before it was only playing around, my adrenaline surged more than it ever has. It was like a drug, making my senses unbearably acute and forcing my muscles to use every ounce of power they had. But it seemed like the air specialist was cautious. Instead of turning the corner hastily, he came at an angle, arriving with distance between us. Still, I charged, turning and running away because things didn't go exactly as predicted would only give him the opening he wanted, and my desperation wasn't going to go unsatisfied. My large strides carried my arm to where it needed to go. I threw myself at that robed man with wild abandon. Everything seemed to be in slow motion. And he raised his palm in retaliation. He pushed it toward my chest, but disregarding whatever he was going to do, I pushed forward, and my knife met its target. I stabbed forward, but instead of the knife slicing through the robe, it was actually stopped. However, my surging force behind it couldn't be so easily negated. Although the blade didn't slice through, I could distinctly feel the knife push its fabric-enveloped edge into the man's body. I could feel flesh split, and I could hear the man yell in pain. Fabric might block a slash, but its flexibility still allowed deformation. I was basically stabbing him with a dulled blade, and it had its effects. However, his palm that was slammed against my torso didn't seem to be for nothing. Right after I stabbed, I could feel an odd force surge from his hand with a momentary flash. I could feel the gust of air brush against my body, making my clothes flutter, but that was light. Instead, the force was invisible as it surged through my body. An invisible energy. It felt both weirdly invasive and incredibly painful as it disrupted my insides. It was like a punch to the liver. It made me weak, my stomach contracting and forcing me to vomit. My legs buckled for but a moment as I was thrown to the floor. But as I pulled away, I could see a vague phantom appear beside the air specialist. And then, a knife appeared in his neck. Blood sprayed into the air as his body collapsed, his hands clutching his neck. That phantom moved toward me, grabbing my arm and forcing me up despite every cell in my body protesting. Don't stop! Not unless you want to burn alive! Plex's voice shook my head before he shoved me into another alleyway. After that, I could hear more explosions along with the enraged shouts of the leader. Right in the high of my adrenaline, I ignored the pain and ran even without breathing. But now, I really was at my limit. I didn't even have 10 seconds to recover, and minutes of that had pushed my body to its short-term limits. So I found the nearest doorway and threw my body against it. Thankfully, luck was on my side as it was thrown open. I stumbled into a dark room decorated with sparse furniture covered in dust. Abandoned, probably, or just really in need of a cleaning. Either way, nobody seemed to be home, so I ran to the back, entering another door to enter a similarly dark and smaller room. It seemed to be a bedroom, fit with a closet and everything. It was the closet I'd disappeared into. After that, I could hear hurried footsteps scamper across the wooden floor of the living room. It was the Fireball Warlock, and his breath was hurried as he slowly walked through. He was quiet, as was I. I tried as best I could, but I needed to breathe, so my breath wasn't exactly quiet. When I was still inside the closet, all the sounds I was making muffled. And I knew that guy wasn't one to get close. He had kept his distance the entire time. He probably didn't have a nasty trick like the air specialist. So I was given some time. Time to revel in the agony of my bodily pain. My stomach hurt the most, like all my guts were bruised. And they probably were. That invisible energy wave was a nasty attack. I could taste the iron of blood on my tongue. However, I had noticed something else inside me. More specifically, I'd noticed a change inside my mind. It was like I had gained a new awareness of something. Something supernatural. Within a dark space inside my head, I could see one bright star and 12 faded stars. A single star of the 13 stars was now present, and as if it were the gateway, I could make out other objects within. The patriarch of the Tavera family said I was a summoner. Well, the powers of a summoner were obvious. They summoned things to do battle for him. And my summons... I could hear the footsteps of the Fireball man make their way into the room I was in. As my breathing was hurried, he probably knew where I was. Sure enough, his steps stopped, and everything was silent. But then, through the gap underneath the door I was behind, I could see a flash. I raised my arms. Boom! A burst of fire crashed into the door, shattering the wood and blowing it down. There was dust and smoke that rose up as the Fireball man approached the doorway. He looked inside, his face sure of himself. But then, I stood, facing him directly, and my arm was raised. My hand that held the flintlock pistol pointed straight for his face. I smiled through the agony of my body, even as blood spilled from my lips and tongues of fire burned my clothes. I don't think I've ever been so excited as I looked across the barrel of this primitive weapon. Tally-ho, bitch! Bang! The patriarch of the Tavera family looked down at me with a punchable smile. Thankfully, they had a healer. It was an older gentleman who was a warlock and trained in the ways of healing,
whatever that meant. All I knew was that I felt a lot better after he drugged me some tasty red pills that melted in my mouth. They were kind of like candies. Plex, on the other hand, was perfectly fine. Figures, since his ability was apparently turning invisible. No wonder he was so good in this line of business. If he were by himself, he could just escape any confrontation. You did good, kid. To think you'd awaken your power right as you were cornered. You know, I think you're just right for this line of business. Isn't that right, Patriarch? Indeed. The ability to grow in the face of adversity is the greatest trait one can have. Your wisdom is spot on. What do you think, John? The payout for this job is big, and there will be more in the future. How about you come officially work with me? I was silent as I weakly raised my middle finger. It didn't seem like this insult translated to this world, though, as Plex tilted his head. What's that? Something you can shove up your ass. The Patriarch suddenly roared in laughter, smacking Plex's back. Plex, you've got a good one here. Take him to the Polaris family after he recovers. He's made it through this trial by fire, so I plan to make true on my promise. Sure thing, Patriarch. Plex nodded as the Patriarch walked out. The two of us were left alone, me in the medical bed of the Tavera mansion. Plex narrowed his eyes at me. You get 20% of the pay. Deal. 10%, since you easily agreed. What? I jumped, and we argued until I was too tired to negotiate anything better than 17%. After that, I was finally allowed to rest, succumbing to incredible mental exhaustion. I was pretty sure the encounter only lasted an hour or so. After a night's rest at the Tavera mansion, I left the black market and headed back to my small hotel room. Of course, that wasn't without my cut of the pay from the heavyweight job. Just under 20% of the pay gave me about 3,400 coin. It was an enormous amount considering the other small jobs only gave a few hundred coin at most. Of course, this pay was earned at the risk of my life, but if I were Plex with his experience and abilities, I too would be having a heyday with these jobs. Earning huge amounts of money would be child's play. However, after my discovery in the face of death, I was thinking that I really might be able to carve out a spot for myself in this business. While on my bed, still recovering from my internal wounds, I lifted my hand and gazed at my crest. Then I closed my eyes. In the dark space of my mind, I could see one star lighting the space. Around it were 12 other stars, all of them faded, obviously not yet unlocked. I concentrated on the first lit one, and my vision zoomed into the star. It was like the star was a portal to another dimension, one that contained an assortment of weapons and gear. One of them was the flintlock I'd used last night. A primitive weapon, but still devastating against fleshly targets with its large lead bullet. It was only capable of one shot before it had to be reloaded, and thankfully, I only needed one shot to kill that fireball warlock. Otherwise, I may as well have kissed my life goodbye. The point was, though, that I had just found out the use of my crest. I was indeed a summoner, but instead of summoning monsters or creatures to fight for me, I summoned guns. I couldn't think of a more American power than this, conjuring the power of beautiful steel firearms to deliver hell upon my enemies, or just to keep myself from getting robbed in the black market. Either way, in the first star, I could see primitive weapons like the flintlock, tomahawk, some knives, etc. And there were 12 more stars ahead, all of them faded, my mind unable to look into their dimensions, but I could guess what would lie ahead. Better weapons, better gear. With each star, I would no doubt unlock better weaponry, though I didn't know just how good it would get. As for summoning those weapons, it wasn't as simple as pulling the weapon out of the dimension. In some way, the weapons were still mystical, since the flintlock I pulled out was no longer with me. It had disappeared at some point not long after I used it. And now, when I looked into the star with a bit of a clearer head than before, I could tell that there was a price on these weapons. A price that was paid with the invisible energy inside me. I was certain that the invisible wave of energy I was hit with last night had triggered something within me, since now I was also aware of a mystical energy inside my body. It was a simple ball of energy, located at the center of the 13 stars. It was small, lacking density like a faint fog. It was also red in color. This red ball of energy was faintly connected to the star. I knew that I could stream its energy into it, and with it summon one of the weapons. Unfortunately, my energy wasn't great, and the prices for these weapons seemed significant. Honestly, I wasn't sure how I had summoned the flintlock pistol, but I knew that there were many things that I didn't know about this magical system, so I decided to wait until I could learn more. Until then, suddenly I could hear taps on my door. They were gentle, but given the recent events, I still cautiously opened the door with my hand on the knife sheath. And the person I saw was familiar. Chief!
It's good to see you, John.
The chief smiled. I was very fond of this man from a rural village. Out of the kindness of his heart, he brought me to this city and set me up. Without him, I don't know what I would have done when I first came here. However, I had thought he left, which was why I was surprised he was here. Also, he shouldn't know where I was living, as I had rented a room in a hotel Plex recommended. The chief was all smiles as we clasped hands, but then he checked out my body. Along my face and my exposed arms were several large cuts and bruises that were healing.
Goodness, John, what happened? Who hurt you?
Nobody important, Chief. The situation was handled rather well, if I do say so myself.
If you say so.
The chief looked worried, but with my confidence, he didn't press the matter. I tilted my head at him. Didn't you leave? It's been a few days. You should be heading back to the village.
I was going to, but I wanted to check on you before I left. Make sure you were settling nicely. And since I didn't find you at my hotel, I searched around and found your name here. Sorry if I was intrusive.
No, it's fine. I'm actually glad I got to see you one more time. Here, come in and let me give you something. I waved him in and walked over to a nearby table, pulling out my large sack of coin. As I'd sifted through, I asked a question. Hey, Chief, how much coin does the normal man make in a month?
A month? Well, the men at the town make around 1,000 a month with farming, but for those in the city, maybe 5,000? I couldn't be sure.
Oh. I was surprised to think I got around a month's pay from a single night of work, and that was just a fraction of the entire payout. Being a delivery man paid shockingly well. Not long after, I pulled out a small stack of coin. Here, some money as a thank you for taking care of me. I pushed 1,000 coin toward the chief, and he seemed flustered by the money.
1,000 coin? John, where did you get so much in a few short days?
It was an advance for my new job. Take it for your help. I won't take no for an answer. I slid the coin to him with seriousness that didn't let him deny. It only ended when he reluctantly took the money, giving me a heavy sigh.
John, you're a good kid. Just know you can come by my village at any time. Ymir Village. You'll always have a home there.
Thanks, Chief. Just make sure you get back safely.
Chapter 6 Solo. I had many questions about my new power of summoning. I wanted to know what that energy was, how I could increase it, how to unlock more stars, and how to properly summon weapons. Thankfully, it seemed like the time to learn these things wasn't far off. Although the patriarch of the Tavera family had promised me, I had no idea who the Polaris family was or what they could give me. It was only when I arrived at the warehouse that Plex explained. Oh, yeah, they're a summoner mafia, but not headquartered in the Founders Market. They're located in the second black market called the Black Spider Market. In that place, there are only two mafias that dominate, and one of them is the Polaris family. Plex rubbed his chin while looking across the job board, plucking a few papers. The Polaris family, while primarily filled with summoners, also has divisions of warlocks and knights. They're a powerful family, even greater than the Tavera family in regards to the sheer power of their members. The Tavera family has more influence, though, and handles more money. This difference between them has led to them being allies. What's the difference between the Founders Market and the Black Spider Market? I guess it's the difference between the elites and the commoners. Plex walked over, laying out a few jobs on the table. The Black Spider Market, while handling less monetary volume, also handles the most valuable items. Information, high-class mercenaries, and some of the most exotic items you've ever seen. They're the top dogs of the black market within this kingdom, and you, my friend, have scored an opportunity to meet with them. Specifically, a powerful summoner who's going to give you some advice. This opportunity is a huge one, so huge that I'm shocked you actually got it. Oh, that sounds useful. I brightened at his words. I was just thinking how I needed more information about my power. Now I was going to meet an expert in the field. Truly a God-sent opportunity. And all it took was almost dying in a fiery hell. Plex shook his head. You're lucky, John. I know I roped you into this dangerous job, considering you're new to the city and all, but there are many who would kill to be in your position. Of course, there have been many who've died in your position as well. I think the Patriarch knew that, so he's giving you a bit of support. What you gain in your meeting today will likely determine how you fare over the next several months. Because, well, you're kind of locked into this now. It's do or die.
Wait, the meeting's today? His ominous words blew right over my head as I selectively asked that question. He nodded.
It is, but first... He picked out 2 of the jobs he had in front of him, shoving them in my face. Go make a couple deliveries. Once you get back, we'll leave. Consider yourself initiated, kid. Now, you get to deal with a bunch of addicts and unsavory underground dealers.
I sighed while taking the papers.
From the first day, I had pretty much accepted what I'd gotten into. Of course, if Plex wasn't the way he was, then I would have left quickly. But Plex seemed like a good man, someone who had saved my life a few times already. So long as I wasn't a dumbass, it seemed he would lead me to succeed. I didn't mind working in this shady business, especially considering it paid so well. Plus, it had already taught me a lot about this world, and it would continue to teach me more as I got better. I was jumping into the deep end of what this new life had to offer. But hey, I'd rather do this than be a baker at a bread shop or sitting at the front desk of some random store. With those convictions, I made my way out of the warehouse, embarking on my first solo jobs. My 2 deliveries were rather easy. The hardest part was navigation. I had to admit it was embarrassing looking like a tourist with a map, so much of my time was spent wondering if I was going in the right direction, only taking out my map a few times. But finally, getting to the locations, I was able to pick up the items to be delivered from the dealers. After that, I took them to the recipients. Thankfully, the first one didn't show me any hostility. He seemed busy and gave me the money straight, so I simply took it back to the dealer. It was the second recipient, though, that gave me a hard time. But that's when my acting skills, what little I had, came into play. I mimicked Plex as best I could, keeping a confident and uncaring attitude, as if I wasn't afraid of a fight. Of course, I was, but they didn't need to know that. That, combined with the friendly demand and a small brandish of my obviously used knife, and the guy's attitude flipped as he brought me the money. And after taking that to the last dealer, my jobs were done. It took almost 3 hours for just 2 jobs, which honestly wasn't that bad. The 2 jobs combined paid me 400 coin, which, while nothing compared to the heavyweight delivery, was still really good pay. After all, monthly salaries on the low end were around 2,000 coin. I was already a fifth of the way there with 3 hours of work. Of course, things were more expensive in the city. I was still living in a hotel, had only 1 pair of normal clothing, and walked around with nothing to my name. Once I actually started buying things, I'm sure the expenses would add up. After all, everything was always more expensive in the cities. I'm sure normal monthly salaries here ranged around 5,000 coin, like what the chief told me. In that case, I had a lot more work to do. But first, I was going to learn about my power from a proper summoner. I was excited as I walked down the streets of the Founders Market. All the sights of risque women and colorful gambling dens were still exciting to me, even though I knew I would get used to it eventually. However, it was when I was approaching the exit that I heard my name. John! Huh? My head turned, finding Libidus and another man waving toward me. They were behind a bar with a few drinks in front of them. I walked over. Hey, Libidus. John, I heard you took a hard hit during the heavyweight run yesterday. It also looks like you healed nicely.
Yeah, thankfully. Whatever the doctor at the mansion gave me was good stuff. Although I'm sore, I don't have any problems working.
Good.
He nodded. Then the man next to him smiled.
He really does look like a tourist.
Well, right now, I know the black market better than the actual city, so forgive me. What's your name? With a smile, I put my hand out toward the stranger. He looked at me silently for a second before grabbing an unopened glass and slapping it into my hand.
Tovex, I heard you're Plex's new protege.
Not necessarily by choice, but yes.
Since when does anyone here have a choice?
He chuckled before taking a swig. Libidus chimed in. You may not have asked for any of this, but it's not a bad line of business. The danger is the worst part. Everything else is easy. I'd actually say you're lucky. You being completely new to the city, a foreigner through and through, is what landed you this job. Why would that give me this job? Because you can never be too sure about someone. The mafias and the clans of the kingdom go to extreme lengths to plant spies and saboteurs in all industries. It's damn near impossible to find someone who has no biases toward any one banner. Neutrality in this place doesn't exist, except for our business. Libidus sighed, but his words made me confused. You're saying that Plex has no biases? Not even towards the Tavera family, who's his client? No, actually. Plex doesn't limit himself. He'll work for enemies if they hand over the money. People like the patriarch of the Tavera family are just those he's friends with. But when it comes to business, there are no loyalties in his eyes. And that's exactly what makes him so famous. That and his abilities. The man has never failed a job. No assassins nor the royal guard can stop him.
And I'm supposed to be his protege? I suddenly had great doubts as to my position in all this. It seemed like Plex was a renowned man, not just in his field of business, but in the entire kingdom. How was I supposed to be that man's apprentice? More than that, how could he possibly declare me so when I haven't shown any ability to handle what he does? Libidus sighed. Well, don't be shocked, but you're not actually the first. Plex has brought in and tutored around a dozen different kids just like you. Most of them died when he dragged them into the lion's den like he did with you. Luckily, you survived. And what about the others who also survived like me? Well... He scratched his cheek. One died during a direct conflict with the Clockwork Institution, and the other got greedy for a delivery and was hunted. That second one ended up becoming a delivery that Plex took, his head being chopped off in a box at the warehouse. And the intended recipient was the kid's mother, so basically, all of them have died. Ouch. I rubbed my temples with a long breath. Tovex suddenly slapped my shoulder.
Hey, all you have to do is not do what they did. Don't die and don't get greedy. Those are basically the only tenets of us delivery men. Those who follow the rules get the money, the fun, and the connections. Those who don't end up with their heads in boxes. So just be smart about things, yeah?
I'll do my best.
I smirked while twisting off the cap of my bottle, taking a swig. It was surprisingly good alcohol. I nodded at it before waving to the two. All right, I got a place to be.
The Polaris family, right? Hey, take all you can get from there. If you get lucky, you'll be doing business with them too. Remember, connections are everything.
I thought that was common knowledge. I asked with a smile while walking away, leaving the black market. After passing through and grabbing a kebab from Chef Black's restaurant, I made my way back to the warehouse. There, Plex was sprawled out on a chair, snoring while asleep. Seriously? It's not even midnight yet. I walked over, kicking his leg. Hey.
Huh?
We got places to be, and I was only gone for a few hours. He yawned and spent a few seconds waking up. Then he sniffed, and his eyes turned toward my bottle. I narrowed my eyes, suddenly knocking it all back and downing what was left. Damn you. Hey, this is good stuff. Speaking of, I ran into Libertas and Tovex, and they told me all about your prior apprentices. Oh? He sobered up a bit, leaning back into the seat. It's true. A lot of youngins have gotten killed attempting to survive in this line of work. Why? Does that scare you? It doesn't make me happy. To think that if I hadn't discovered how to use my power, I would have died from a fireball. Sure, you saved me once, but you still put me in that position. So I can't say that my trust in your integrity hasn't warped significantly. But, well, I suppose I have my own assurances now. Got one taste of power and decided that you're invincible. I happen to have an apprentice like that. He's dead now. As if that fact were something to be proud of, Plex only smirked at me, and I could understand. I barely knew anything about these crests or the magic of this world. I was hardly a newborn baby in the field, and I was already confident in myself. That would be a bad thing, but only if I were anything but a summoner. Guns happen to be a great equalizer. Unless Plex had some strong magical armor underneath his clothes, or his magic was as strong as steel, a single bullet from even a flintlock could kill him, let alone the weapons in my other stars. I mean, I killed that fire warlock with a single bullet, and he had far more experience than I did. Guns were great. But that was difficult to explain to Plex, so I didn't press the issue, just shaking my head at him. All I want from you is to not be thrown into certain death. I could be an apprentice or whatever the hell you wrote me into being. I want the money and experience, but don't go thinking you can throw my life away just like all the other apprentices you've apparently had. Do that and I might just take you out with me. Is that a threat? Plex stood from his seat, standing in front of me with a casual gaze of grizzled hostility. But I only tensed up, meeting him head on. Yeah, that was a threat. So if you leave me to die in a clusterfuck of wizards and fireballs, you better make sure I'm dead by the end of it. Otherwise, I'm coming after you with some cold steel in my hand. After a moment of tense silence, Plex smiled and chuckled. You're a feisty one. Don't worry, John. If I wanted to kill you, I wouldn't be taking you to a place that'll make you stronger. So how about we quit the pissing contest and go take a trip?
He smacked my shoulder and started walking out of the warehouse. Relaxing my body, I sighed and left with him, taken to the city streets. Chapter 7. Maxwell. The Founders Market was located in the outer regions of the city. This meant that its area wasn't high class despite being wealthy. The Black Spider Market, on the other hand, I didn't think it was in the heart of the city. Even more that it would be clearly marked for the public to see. Besides the monolithic magic tower and the royal palace, there were several other skyscrapers around them, though they weren't as tall. I roughly counted 8 other skyscrapers that could compare in height, and one of those was the Black Spider Hotel. Many might see it and think it a mere luxurious hotel, a place for other diplomats or politicians to stay temporarily. But apparently, it was a front for a much deeper reality. Plex led me into the hotel, and it was there that we met the receptionist. He was a man of average height and build, not looking special in any way besides his prim appearance and demeanor. But, of course, no assumptions could be made about anybody associated with this place.
Ah, Plex, it's good to see you again. Making another delivery?
Not quite, Keymaster. I'm actually here for my protege, John, right here. He patted my shoulder, prompting the Keymaster to nod toward me.
John, is it? I wish you luck during your session with the Polaris family.
He smiled toward me as Plex put 2 coins on the table. Taking them, the Keymaster waved his hand. An owl was momentarily summoned on his shoulder. That big-eyed bird looked at me before looking down at the coins. Its eyes flashed, and then the Keymaster placed the coins back on the table. Plex took one, and I took the other. The owl disappeared as I took the coin.
Welcome to the Black Spider Hotel. You have been granted entry. Here are the keys.
He brought out 2 keys from seemingly nowhere, handing them to us. I felt its weighty significance and copper-like texture that was refined with masterful craftsmanship, giving it intricate yet sleek designs. After that, Plex said his goodbyes, as did I. We left for what seemed like an elevator. In fact, the entire first floor of the hotel was filled with elevators. At least a dozen of them filled the walls, and we quickly chose one before stepping inside.
Go ahead and insert your key.
Plex said that as he did so. I could see 10 keyholes on one of the walls, so I picked one at random and stuck my key inside.
Turn to the right.
Click. I listened to him and heard a noise. After that, a screen flashed above the keyholes. It showed 2 buttons. One had the number 3 on it, and the other was blank. Remember this for the future. Plex spoke while pulling out his coin, looking at its surface. Every day, the floor to access the Black Spider Market is different. The correct floor is indicated by your coin, so if you're going for the market, enter the number on the coin. On the other hand, if you're here for the hotel, click the button with the number 3 on it.
Okay.
I pulled out my coin like he did and saw a number on it. Then I tapped the blank button, causing a dial of numbers to appear around it.
I typed in 82. Ding! With my input, the elevator made another noise as it began to move. Good. Just remember, only one person needs the coin, but both people need the key. That means you always go to the keymaster first, hence his name. Alright. Oh, and don't mess with the guy either. He may not look it, but he's the emissary for the entire Black Spider market. Let's just say if you happen to see him outside of that reception desk, something somewhere is seriously fucked up. Right. I just let out a sharp sigh. Seriously, you couldn't judge anyone by appearance here. It wasn't long before the elevator brought us to our destination. When it opened, I could see a luxurious hallway with a red carpet, chandeliers along the ceiling, and large paintings of what seemed like notable figures, both men and women. There were 2 people standing guard at the end of the hallway, both standing to the side of a set of double doors. They were wearing full-plate armor seemingly made of silver, their faces covered by intimidating but intricately designed helmets. We walked up to them, Plex taking out his coin while doing so. I also did, and upon seeing both, they pushed open the doors for us. And then, we were allowed into the Black Spider market. Oh, I forgot this was today. What a coincidence. Plex let out a happy chuckle as we descended a small set of stairs, walking into a huge plaza. It was full of floating lights and colorful sprites that looked like fairies. There were men and women dancing within this plaza to the melodic beat of an orchestra playing within an open building. Their music, both upbeat yet complex in its musical design, had everyone laughing, smiling, and clacking their heels of their shoes to the rhythm. The atmosphere was intoxicating. I felt like jumping right in, joining all those strangers with passion and freeing enthusiasm. I could also smell the high-class alcohol, rich in flavor, yet carrying an aroma of powerful ethanol. Plus, everyone was dressed so nicely, like it was some kind of public ball. They were also wearing masquerade masks that covered the top half of their faces, all of them designed with flamboyant feathers or designs. I felt out of place in that way. Even though I was in a suit, it seemed casual compared to the luxurious dresses and tuxedos of everyone else. I also didn't have a mask. This is Vatsi's Gala. It happens at the end of every 3rd month, put on and paid for by one of the richest men in the damn world, Harold Vatsi. I'm surprised the Polaris family is having you come to them today. That, or Patriarch Tavera is fucking with us. Seriously? He has a sense of humor, so it wouldn't be the first time. Let's just head over. Maybe whoever is supposed to meet you isn't drunk yet. Plex led me through the plaza. We passed through wide-open streets, most of which were filled with people who were passing through to other buildings nearby. Most buildings here were the highest class. Their entries were exotic, carrying flashing designs not unlike neon lights and statues or art. I saw some food establishments, but the majority of buildings were occupied by some sort of craftsman. There was even a library, which turned out to be one of the biggest buildings in the market. The only building bigger than that was the auction house. Plex explained to me that there was no safer place to be than within the auction house during the monthly auctions, and Vatsi's Gala was the party that came after the tri-monthly auction,
which was the one that sold the most powerful and exotic items. The gala served as a major resting point, almost like a holiday, allowing everyone to get some much-needed entertainment. Of course, only those who could actually enter the Black Spider Market could participate. So the final day of every quarter was full of chaos, money, and fun. It wasn't uncommon for hundreds of millions of coin to be passed around in that 24-hour period. After all, the things that were sold during the auction were nothing but the best. A small selection of exotic, world-shattering, or insanely luxurious items that caught the eyes of the elites. Of course, there was also numerous sets of things like gear or mass amounts of items that, while not incredibly rare or unique, were still valuable and hard to find. Many illegal items could be attained this way, and nothing lowly like the drugs passed through the Founders Market. It was a place I definitely wanted to know about, as apparently our delivery service was also responsible for moving some things for that auction. It was kind of amazing, the privileges afforded to us mere deliverymen. The Black Spider Market wasn't huge, nothing compared to the Founders Market. After all, it was located in the city center behind the Black Spider Hotel. Besides the library and auction house, there are only a few dozen other buildings, along with the massive plaza currently hosting the gala. So it didn't take long to walk to the headquarters of the Polaris family. It was called the Polaris Gate, the entrance that led into the family's estate. And at first glance, the place seemed like a compact college campus. But it was almost entirely empty. Lights were on, but there wasn't a soul in sight besides the guards at the gate. This was obviously due to the party. I was sure everyone was partaking in their night of unhinged entertainment. We approached the guards.
State your business.
We hail from the Tavera family on business. I am Plex, and this is John.
Ah, I understand. Please follow me.
One of the guards seemed to be expecting us as he led the way into the estate. He walked us along beautifully paved roads and magical lights. With nobody around, the atmosphere was full of mysticism and serenity. Eventually, we entered a large building. Within its halls were pairs of large double doors, each of them adorned with unique designs that seemed to represent the demeanor of their owners. The one we stopped at was a pair of doors that seemed luxuriantly decorated, yet weathered by time. It was a deep navy blue with inlaid gems that glistened like stars, but it clearly hadn't been taken care of for a while. The guard knocked.
Esteemed Summoner Anderson, John has arrived.
Just send him in already. There was an exasperated sigh from within the room, yet muffled by the doors. The guard turned to me.
The esteemed sir is named Maxwell Alberain, and he has quite the temperament. Do be sure to muster your patience, because he has no qualms with kicking you from the estate if he gets angry. He is still one of our most esteemed teachers, however, so take full advantage of this opportunity.
Right, thanks. I gave the guard a nod as he pushed open the door. Plex smacked my shoulder as he turned. Have fun. I hummed while going inside, scanning the room as I did so. At first glance, it seemed like a magical lab. My nose was hit with the thick aroma of what I could only describe as an herbal mist. But at the same time, there was a fresh hint of alcohol. All around the room were desks, bookshelves, and various pieces of lab equipment like glass flasks, exotic plants, and animal parts stored in containers. The most eye-catching thing in the room, though, floated below the ceiling in the center of the room. It was a huge blue crystal dodecahedron that slowly rotated while shining soft light on the lab. Just the sight of that magical geometric figure spurred something within me. Other than that, the second thing I focused on was the man who slumped down in a chair, a large bottle in his hands that was still completely filled. It was still capped as he held it in his hands. His visage was gray, and he seemed to be brooding over something. Unlike everyone else, he didn't seem to be enjoying this holiday evening. He had a short beard and brushed back hair that was unkempt. He also wore navy blue robes above a nice suit. At the same time, his eyes were deep as they reflected the side of the unopened bottle. For a while, I stood by the door, unsure of what to do. It didn't seem like this man was in any mood to teach me anything. He just continued to stare at the bottle. Perhaps 5 minutes passed like that. Eventually, he closed his eyes and placed the bottle in a drawer of his desk. After slouching back once more while pinching the bridge of his nose, he muttered, "What do you know?" "Absolutely nothing." I didn't sugarcoat things as I answered directly. It seemed to catch him off guard since he glanced at me with slight incredulity. His eyes looked me over with criticism. "You come straight off the farm or something?" "No." "Then straighten your damn back." "Oh." Realizing I was slouched a bit from waiting around for so long, my abdomen tightened and my torso straightened. But even then, he didn't take his scrutinizing eyes off of me. He stared at me for several moments before opening his mouth. "What's your name?" "John Cooper." I gave my name, but I was also confused as to why he didn't already know it. Then again, neither of us had more than 1 day's notice about this. "Where do you come from?" I hesitated. After all, I didn't exactly know about any places of significance beyond this city, and I wasn't about to speak about something as outlandish as coming from another world. So I gave the name of the only place I knew the name of. A place called Ymir Village. "So you did come straight off the farm?" "Well, yes and no." I remained vague as he pried further. "How old are you?" 22 years old. "You were sent to me at the request of Patriarch Tavera. What is your affiliation with him?" "I'm a delivery man. I helped him with a single job. It almost cost me my life, but since I came back, he said I would get some tutelage." "I see." He let out a small sigh before scratching his head. "You're a summoner? Have you gone through an activation ceremony?" "What's that?" "You really do know nothing. An activation ceremony is the first step all with crests take to properly initiate their powers. Some say that it's a process of enlightenment or a way to wake up your soul, but really it's nothing more than infusing your crests with power in order to make your mind aware of it." "Oh, no. I haven't been through the ceremony." "Figures. But I have become aware of my crest. I've even used its power." "Huh?" His eyes sparkled with the slightest hint of interest. Tell me the details.
Basically, I was hit with a wave of invisible energy by a warlock, and afterward I could see the 13 stars of my crest within my mind. I was even able to summon something, but it disappeared not long after I used it.
Energy? You mean mana? You're telling me that being hit with a low-level mana wave actually activated your authority?
I suppose?
Through interference, I could tell that the wave of invisible energy I was hit with was called a mana wave.
I asked about what I didn't understand, though. What's authority?
An authority is what we call the levels of power one can achieve through crests. To be able to summon something means you have activated your first authority, and to think it happened by being hit with a mana wave.
I see. What about mana? What is it?
The invisible energy ever present throughout the world that allows one to call upon nature's elements. However, only warlocks can utilize mana. Summoners use what's called isekai, the extra-dimensional power of the mind. Knights use vigor, the profound power of the body.
Oh. It seemed the different types of magi also had 3 different types of energy. In that case, they were very clearly divided by more than just their powers. So, basically, I had awoken my first authority, or my first star, allowing me to summon items from another dimension using isekai. That was where my knowledge stopped. It seemed Maxwell had also summarized the shallow depths of my knowledge as he went quiet once more. And I suppose I wish he stayed that way. The next words to come out of his mouth were nothing but irritating.
You're ignorant.
I guess.
An idiot who knows nothing. Not even common knowledge seems to have a place within that thick skull of yours. It's like you've spent your life intentionally being a dumbass, taking 0 impressions from anybody who has ever spoken of magi within your presence.
My gaze turned deadpan as he continued to insult me for something that wasn't my fault. While I understood his words from the standpoint of a native, I was still ticked off. Just as I was about to retort, though, he stood from his seat, disappearing amidst a few of his bookshelves. After listening to the shuffling of paper and a few dropped books, he came back with 6 books with papers sticking out of them.
There are 2 things you must learn as a summoner. First is what we call accumulation. I won't teach you any of that right now since you don't need it yet. So I will teach you the second thing. Since you are someone with absolutely no impression of summoning in the slightest, having come from some backwater village and having yet to even get your citizenship, I will teach you this. He dropped the books on his desk.
Now, while I was still irked by all his prior insults, I was beginning to understand that he would at least give me some valuable knowledge.
Accumulation is standard. There is very little deviation from the normal formula, and the Magisterium holds a legal monopoly on the distribution of the technique. But summoner calls, like warlock magic and knight martial arts, are diverse and plentiful. The Polaris family has their own set of martial arts magic and calls. However, what I will be teaching you deviates from the standard.
Picking up the topmost book of the pile, Maxwell flipped it open, his eyes scanning across the pages with a look of melancholy.
Summoning is looked down upon, scorned as weak. The call's likened to nothing but a cane for the frail. And there have been some who have proven the world wrong, but they have been outshined by the multitude of warlocks and knights who have so frequently attained vast power. And summoners are not innocent, failing to better themselves like the warlocks and knights, failing to rise through adversity like they have, failing to innovate as they did over millennia. Which is why I've devoted my life to this work. A call to join the League of Disaster Magic and Apex Martial Arts. A call that makes bond limits obsolete. A call to bring down even the most powerful beings. It is the call of the fallen angel.
Chapter 8. Call. Maxwell spoke of his ambition and his life's work with great emotion. I could tell that he was deeply attached to this technique. Or, I should say, call. Like a warlock's magic spell or knight's martial art, summoners had calls. The call of the fallen angel was something Maxwell himself had created. It wasn't a call that had been tested by time or used by anyone else. It also made me skeptical. I didn't know anything about calls, nor Maxwell who had created this. With my naivete, I couldn't verify its quality. Then again, within the Polaris family, he was an esteemed sir. I could at least understand that he wasn't blowing smoke up my ass and knew a thing or two as a summoner himself. In that case, I could trust his expertise. Especially since I knew nothing as it was. I was in dire need of something that would allow me to use my power. This also meant that perhaps he wasn't solely insulting me when he said I was ignorant, stupid, and a dumbass. Maybe that was necessary for me to be successful with this call, being a blank slate with no biases. Not that it made me less irritated. You have no use for common knowledge, not yet, anyway. Since you have come to me as an empty vessel, I will fill you with the foundational knowledge of this call. You will learn things as necessary for you to use this call the way it was created. Alright, but how good is this call anyway? I'd at least like to know how it compares to something standard, like a call from the Magisterium. Standard? Please. He scoffed, as if I'd degraded his name. I was a summoner with 11 authorities, just shy of the pinnacle of this world. And I was a revolutionary in my field. If not for... No, you don't need to know about that. Just know that this call is something that will carry you to the top, so long as you have the talent and the dedication. It is not something that anything of the Magisterium could possibly compare with. Then why aren't you in this call much more famous than you are? As I said, you don't need to know about that. Should you rise to a respectable level, perhaps you will come to find out yourself. And by then, the knowledge wouldn't affect your development. Now, take this book and begin reading. I will speak as you follow through with the text. He handed the book to me with care, prompting me to take it with a bit of curiosity. I couldn't lose anything by learning this, so I may as well get everything I could from Maxwell's tutelage, especially if he was offering it for free. Before we begin. Suddenly, Maxwell eyed me with a weird glint in his eye. It was shrewd, causing me to narrow my own. I will accept 3,000 coin a week for my teaching services. Deal. Actually, after further consideration, I'm thinking 5,000 will suffice. What? Dropping all pretenses, I entered a heated negotiation with Maxwell.
Only when we settled on 3,800 coin per week did I finally let out a relieved sigh. In all honesty, 3,800 coin a week was a massive amount of money for me. I had barely started working, and each job might only give a couple hundred coin. On top of food, housing, and all the money I would need to buy myself other necessities, I might not be able to pay it. At least, that was in the short term. If I were frugal for a while and managed to get past the next month or so, then I would be fine. Still, it seemed like I wouldn't be getting a new pair of clothes anytime soon. Thankfully, Maxwell was at least accommodating with everything else. It didn't seem like he had much of a schedule, so we agreed to meet in the mornings after the Founders Market went dark and I was done with the work. With that, he began his first lesson. Summoning wasn't as straightforward as warlock magic or knight martial arts. Summoning involved contacting spirits from another dimension that summoners access through their minds. And yes, it seemed like even the weapons and gear I could summon, like guns and tomahawks, were spirits. How that worked, I wasn't sure. But Maxwell made sure that I thought of even inanimate objects as living beings with their own intelligence. I just went with it. After all, that was probably the least weird part about this whole thing. With that, he moved on to other more detailed teachings. First, he taught me that there were two types of summoning: communion and marriage. Communion was where one called upon the spirits for a temporary amount of time. This was what I did with the flintlock pistol. With Maxwell's Call of the Fallen Angel, though, I could create a communion with the spirit and in real time power it with my psyche. So long as the communion was active, I could wield the spirit and it would return to the dimension when the communion was cut. This method of active communion was apparently unique to his call, though he didn't tell me what the standard method was. Then there was marriage, and not unlike what it was commonly known as, marriage involved creating a life's bond with the spirit. A marriage, she said, was to be treated as if I were married to a woman. The commitment would be lifelong, and not only that, but the spirit's life would be tied to mine. Should I die, the spirit would die with me. This made it far deeper than a standard communion, and was apparently where the specialty of the Call of the Fallen Angel lay. With this system of marriage, I could create bonds with technically as many spirits as I wanted. This special bond also afforded both the summoner and the spirit the ability to share their powers in more dynamic ways. In this way, the spirits wouldn't merely be tools to be used, but an ally to cooperate with. However, the cost to marry a spirit was high, and not something to be treated lightly. To marry a spirit was to permanently remove it from the other dimension, attaching it to your mind and soul. If, while in battle, the spirit were killed, it would do great damage to your soul, no different from gouging a chunk out of it. Thus, marriage involved risk for both the summoner and the spirit. It was only to be done if the summoner truly had a deep bond with the spirit and could reasonably accept and guard against the risks. This meant that the number of marriages should be few. These concepts were easy to understand. However, the process to carry out these processes wasn't so. To properly commune with the spirit required a complex process called charming. This was basically spellcasting, but for summoners. But charming just any spirit wasn't wise. For one, not all spirits were neutral or benevolent. Some were malicious, and communing with the malicious spirit could end badly should it revolt against you when you needed it to cooperate. So, to sift through all the spirits of the dimension, Maxwell taught perhaps the most important and foundational piece of knowledge all summoners should know. It was called projection, something that was universal among all sorcerers. Of course, Maxwell's call had a unique way of projecting into the dimension of your authority. First, there was unassisted projection, which involved a superficial scan of the dimension with your mind. This could reveal details about some unelusive spirits. On the other hand, there was a catalyst projection, whereby the summoner turned a magic spirit into a catalyst to allow a deep search into the dimension. This afforded them far greater abilities and details, allowing them to glimpse into the nature of the spirits they discovered. It was at this point that Maxwell stopped feeding me information. With the basics down, I understood that the first step I needed to take was projecting into the dimension of my first authority, or my first star. That way, I could properly and systematically discover spirits, charm them, and then commune with them. Of course, learning those things would come later. With the massive influx of information and the fact that I had yet to pay anything for his teaching, Maxwell sent me away, agreeing to come back the next morning and bring a 500 coin deposit. I left the Black Spider Market. I was in a small daze as I left through the Polaris Gate. Everything that I had learned, while merely conceptual and superficial, opened up a whole new world. Getting hit by fireballs was one way to make me realize that this was truly a magical world. But actually learning about this magic and taking the first steps towards utilizing it was another thing entirely. Besides, just lecturing me on all that conceptual information had taken hours. While informative, Maxwell seemed to enjoy going on tangents. This naturally extended the duration of his lecture, and by now the sun had already risen. Walking into the major plaza of the market, I could see the aftermath of the tri-monthly holiday. A few bodies were strewn across some tables, including 2 draped across the roof of a nearby building. Some maids and butlers were attending to these unconscious partygoers, hauling them off into the Black Spider Hotel. That was also where I was headed. Making my way to the front desk, I met the keymaster who was sitting back and reading a book. "Hello, keymaster." "Ah, John! How was your time with the Polaris family?" "It went well enough, I'd say. My only issue now is how I'm going to pay the extortive fees Maxwell wants for his teaching. I mean, I've been in this city for all of a week, and I'm still living in a hotel. I barely have a change of clothes, too." "I see. Maxwell can be shrewd, but his knowledge is worth any cost you may incur. I may be able to assist you, however. Your coin, please." "Oh, here." Digging in my pocket, I retrieved the coin I was given upon entry. I also handed back the key. Taking both, the keymaster's owl appeared on his shoulder once more. It looked at me, then the coin. After the coin glowed, the man flicked it with his thumb, prompting me to catch it. He also tucked the key into his coat, retrieving another. Unlike the previous copper one, this one was silver. "Your coin and key have been updated. Your new room has been allocated on the 12th floor. Since a little bird has told me that you plan on entering the magisterium, I have reserved the room for the time until then. I hope that eases some of your financial burden while you settle."
Really? You're giving me a room for free? Naturally. Otherwise, it wouldn't help you much, now would it? He smiled at me, making me scratch my head with a bit of embarrassment. Right. Thank you, Keymaster. I can only hope to pay this back in the future. It's of no consequence. Please, enjoy your stay at the Black Spider Hotel. He gave me a charming bow, which I returned in kind. After that, I left to my former hotel room. It was there that I grabbed what little items I had, canceled my reservation, and took everything back to the Black Spider Hotel. In the elevator, I made my way to the 12th floor. It led me out in a hallway, which I walked down to eventually find a room marked with the number 22. My key was engraved with the same number, so I inserted it into the lock, turning it, and hearing a click. The door swung open, revealing a room that was far more luxurious and spacious compared to the other hotel. It was like comparing a by-the-hour motel and a 5-star room. This new room of mine was equipped with a full kitchen, a large bedroom with a window that overlooked the city, a full bathroom, and a comfortable living room. It had everything I could ask for, plus some, and all of it was free. I was quite shocked that the Keymaster would give me something like this, let alone help me in any way. It wasn't like my living fees were that expensive, so I could have dealt with it. Still, this new home would give me great peace of mind. One less thing to worry about and a source of great comfort. For some time, I stared out of the window of my room, seeing the sunrise gradually overtake twilight. It was shockingly beautiful as the rays of light filtered between buildings, reflecting off glass and the intricate construction of places like the Royal Palace. Combined with the successive events of the day, I was left in a daze. This really was a different life, and now I was finally beginning to find my place in this foreign world. Although it was a bit jarring at first, I was able to acclimate to sleeping during the day. And when the sun began to fall, I emerged from my room. With a new bill to pay, I couldn't slack with my work. Heading to the warehouse, I met Plex and recounted what happened. He seemed happy for me, and since I told him that I needed jobs, he didn't bother me much. Heading to the job board, I plucked a few papers and read their contents. This delivery service of ours was both simple and difficult. It involved not just ferrying valuable items, but surviving any encounters with unsavory individuals. I'd quickly learned that even with our principles of mercy, I couldn't give any room to those who may want to cheat me. It was with this mindset that I tackled my jobs. From delivering illegal contraband to ferrying messages, the jobs I took were varied. None of the items we moved were normal. All of it could get you arrested, should it be found outside the black market. Thankfully, I didn't have too difficult of a time. While some clients got aggressive, it was nothing I couldn't quell with the brandish of the knife. The most I had to do was land a square punch on a guy's mouth when he spit in my face after asking for a payment. Another thing I kept track of was time it took to complete a job. Some jobs required me to deliver items that were already stored in the warehouse, saving me a trip. But others required me to go between two clients to grab a package, deliver it, collect payment, and return to the source.
With my knowledge of the market's layout, I wasn't the most efficient. But despite that, and conflicts with clients, I was able to complete a job at an average time of an hour and a half. That meant I could complete 6 jobs if I worked nonstop for 9 hours. With some downtime in between, 6 jobs would make a 10-hour workday. Then there was the average pay. Some jobs were generous and had commission fees of around 400 coin. Those were usually a bit riskier since you were either hauling obvious cargo or a small but valuable item. It would invite trouble from others besides the clients. Then there was the standard. The majority of jobs paid between 150 and 250 coin. After a full workday of 6 jobs, I came out with about 1,200 coin. That was an average of 200 coin per job. Doing some simple math, that equated to 120 coin an hour, and my weekly bill of 3,800 coin divided by 120 came out to about 32 hours of work just to pay for my education. In all honesty, 32 hours of work wasn't bad. I could have my bill paid off in just a few days. Anything after that would go toward buying myself things like food and clothes. With that knowledge, I decided that 5 jobs per day, 6 days a week was reasonable. 6,000 coin a week. That's pretty nice. What is? Libidus questioned from beside me. After a hard day's work, I ran into him at the bar we previously met at. That bar was apparently the spot for the delivery men of Plex's company to hang out. I explained to him all the numbers I had run in regards to my income and weekly bill, and for the most part my plan seemed sound. But then, I suddenly remembered something that might make everything much more difficult. Crap! I forgot about taxes. Hey, how bad are the taxes here? I swear if I lose any more than a quarter of my paycheck, I'm gonna burn this city to the ground. Well, the taxes are about a quarter. At most a third, depending on how much you make. But yet again, that's one of the perks of working in the black market. The ability to entirely disregard taxes. No shit. I chuckled. In the long list of things I hated, taxes were definitely up there. To think I could just blatantly disregard them. I was beginning to love this job more and more. Oh, one more thing. I remembered something else. I still have to get my citizenship. You wouldn't happen to know anything or anyone that could help me with that, would you? As a matter of fact, I do. Libidus took a sip of his liquor. The black market has everything, John. There's a guy here that handles that stuff. He pays off a customs agent, and all the applications he puts forward get accepted quickly. It basically bypasses all the bullshit you would have to deal with on the official route. Of course, you'll have to pay a high price, but it's worth it considering the money you're beginning to make. Right. So where can I find this guy? On Hellard Road. The place doesn't have a name, but it's known by its building number 333. Go there and ask for help getting a citizenship. That simple? Yep. That guy gets a lot of business, so it's become a proper business. I see. Thanks. I'll have to do that tomorrow. Right now, I'd need to get to class. With that valuable piece of information, I bid Libidus goodbye, heading to the Black Spider Market. Chapter 9. Spirit.
My second day of learning involved the more complex details of the call. Specifically, I needed to learn how to project into the dimension and search for spirits properly, even though I could already seen plenty as I was. Turns out, these dimensions went deep. What I could see was only what existed on the surface. Within each dimension, there were both weak and powerful spirits. It was the powerful ones that lurked in the dark, waiting to be discovered. Naturally, I wanted to commune with or even marry the most powerful ones. Taking several hours to do so, Maxwell taught me what was basically a spell. By weaving Psyche in a certain pattern, I could form a drone and dive deep into the dimension. This would allow me to project. But weaving my Psyche at all was difficult. Just calling on that invisible power in my mind was enough to frustrate me. It was like moving a new limb. It didn't listen to my commands, let alone move into complex formation. Luckily, Maxwell had an exercise for that, one that stressed the manipulation of my power. Of course, the exercise also made me tired. It drained my mental energy, making me feel like I had worked for a full 24 hours after merely 2. It was a good thing that these classes were at the end of my day. When it was over and I left with mental exhaustion, I headed to my fancy room in the Black Spider Hotel and knocked out. Contrary to the exhaustion, though, my night of sleep was rejuvenating. When I woke up, my mind felt amazingly clear and energetic. Even moving around my Psyche was easier, showing clear progress. And so, I went on with my day, my mood high and my steps light. Taking several jobs from the warehouse at the start of twilight, I headed into the Founders Market and made my way around. My deliveries consisted of 2 small boxes of hard drugs, a bag of jewels, a glass vial of a liquid I didn't ask about, and some lingerie for a nearby brothel. That last one was fun since I got a few kisses from the ladies there, which was good since my mood had been ruined earlier when someone tried to rob me of the jewels. I was able to fend them off with my knife and no small amount of blows, but I took about as much as I dished. My body was bruised and beaten, leaving me to finish my jobs in irritating pain. Well, nothing a hot lady from the brothel couldn't fix. After leaving the erotic place, I made one last stop. Hellard Road, building number 333. This is it. Finding the unnamed building I was looking for, I pushed open the carved wooden door. It led into a small entry room with a front desk, behind which was a mature yet sharp woman. She eyed me curiously as I walked up. Hi, I'd heard this place could help me with getting a citizenship.
It can. Our standard fee is 1,500 coin. You must pay up front, and there are no refunds.
Ouch.
I sighed in resignation, taking out 1,500 coin. Although I had the money, I would have to work a bit of overtime to make up for it and still make Maxwell's bill. Over time, I had discovered the different denominations for coin. Coin was a blanket term, like dollars, and there were different types of coin. This world used silver and gold as its currency, only the 2 metals didn't seem to have quite the rarity as on Earth. Silver coins were less valuable, and there were 2 types, the standard silver coin and the silver bullion.
The silver coin was worth 1 coin, and the silver bullion was worth 10 coin. Then the gold coin was worth 100 coin, while the gold bullion was worth 1,000 coin. I often got paid in gold coin and silver bullion, and only has Plex ever given me gold bullion, so I only had a few on me. I paid the clerk 1 such gold bullion and 5 gold coins, making for 1,500 coin. She took them indifferently and handed me an application.
Fill out all these fields and we will take care of the rest. The application will be submitted today and will be verified in 5 days. That is when you can come back and receive your official citizenship.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, how long does it usually take?
On average, 7 months.
Oh. She smirked while I sighed in amazement. Seems bureaucracy was a sloth in all worlds. Taking the application, I went and quickly filled everything out. It only asked for basic information like my full name and date of birth. I didn't have to input anything like physical descriptions or the name of my parents. I did have to put down 2 important things, though. Upon handing back my application, the clerk stamped my fingerprint and used a device to record my crest. Apparently, it was highly illegal to hide someone's status as a magus, so if you had a crest, it absolutely had to be recorded. I didn't mind anyway. It wasn't like someone could use that against me, and soon enough I'd be entering the magisterium. It couldn't be hidden. With those things, I was finally done. It took no more than 5 minutes, and I would have my citizenship within the week. The black market sure was nice. Sending the application marked the end of my workday, after which I headed to the Black Spider Market and had another lesson with Maxwell. I continued exercising my psyche while trying to weave it into the projection spell I was given. At the same time, since I was a total newbie, I was taught general knowledge about knights and warlocks. Apparently, although they were all considered magi, each of the branches had completely different systems of magic. Warlocks were the spitting image of wizards. They had different spells that they could launch from their body, making them very versatile both in terms of combat and utility. This was also why they were considered the best of the 3 branches. Knights were, as their name implied. They were a magical branch of bodily martial warriors. Through cultivating what they called vigor, a knight could become stronger, faster, gain endless stamina, and pull off martial arts that resembled the powers of mythic gods. They were the second best. And then, at the bottom of the barrel lied the summoners. Considered the worst of all magi, they used psyche to call upon other dimensional spirits to fight for them. They couldn't make themselves stronger, and they couldn't cast any amazing spells. Their powers were entirely reliant on the spirits they summoned. That wasn't to say that summoners weren't strong. It was just that they had hard times fighting warlocks or knights at an equal level across all levels. They just seemed to be a step below everyone else. Maxwell knew that I would be entering the magisterium, and so he told me to prepare to face that kind of discrimination. But, at the same time, he apparently abhorred the thought of allowing me to appear weak. He said that he would prepare me in the time I had before entering so as to not disgrace the summoner name, and more importantly, his call of the fallen angel. It was why he worked me to the bone,
having me exercise my ability to manipulate Psyche and stuff my brain full of information. At least I was getting my money's worth. After the first week of being in this new city, my schedule seemed to settle into place. My work became regular as I took several jobs a day. Occasionally, I even got my hands on some of the higher-paying jobs. These weren't heavyweights, but since I was a newbie, these middleweight jobs most often got handed to the veterans. But work was consistent, and knowing I had bills to pay, the others were generous. Once or twice a week, I would get a job that paid a few thousand coin, giving me plenty of surplus and allowing me to spend a bit more. With the unceasing flow of cold hard cash, I got myself all the necessities I didn't have. Multiple pairs of clothing, a few accessories like pocket watches and hats, all the various items I needed to keep myself clean every day. All my needs were satisfied within a few weeks of working. I even paid back my small debt to Plex, making sure we were even. All my earnings that went above my weekly bills would become either savings or go toward buying me some luxuries. Other than that, after a few weeks, I was finally able to learn projection from Maxwell. On top of that, Plex began to receive jobs for the upcoming monthly auction. After about 3 weeks of exercising my control over Psyche and trying to weave it, I was finally able to perform the projection spell. I was with Maxwell during the accomplishment. Use the newly formed drone to scout the dimension. Once you discover a spirit, it can't be forgotten or lost, so use your energy as efficiently as possible to seek out as many spirits as you can. I was silent as he spoke, focusing on the visions in my mind. As soon as the spell had been woven, I could feel as if my eyes were planted in that drone of Psyche. I could control it, and I used it to fly through the dimension of my first star. I discovered some spirits immediately. Some were identical to my flintlock, and others were items like rapiers. But most importantly, I found ammo. Tons of ammo. Lead bullets and black powder packets littered the entire dimension. These would allow me to reload whatever flintlock guns I used. But perhaps even more than that, I was able to expose certain details about the spirits I saw. I could clearly see just how much Psyche was required to establish a connection to them. Most were well within my limits. But there were some that were expensive. They were the powerful ones that Maxwell talked about, which got me curious. Along with projection, Maxwell had taught me all about communion that was required to utilize the spirits. So, with my drone as the medium, I reached out to one of them. It was a flintlock pistol, but instead of a standard one, this one had a much larger and thicker barrel, along with engravings on the wood body. It was unique, and when I made the handshake and initiated communion, I figured out why. The communion seemed to trigger an influx of memories from another time. In my mind, I could see a large man dressed in an old militia uniform. He rode on a horse and carried a rapier. On his hip was the flintlock pistol I saw. I quickly understood what time period these scenes came from. The Revolutionary War. A time when America fought for its independence from Britain. A time when firearm technology was in its infancy, yet becoming more important than ever. I saw as this loosely uniformed man rode alongside some soldiers of the Continental Army, all of them defending a village from invading redcoats. The two sides quickly entered a heated battle, the man on the horse swinging his rapier while making his way around the village. It was only after a while that his horse took a shot to the chest, unable to maintain itself and fall into the ground. The man jumped off and resumed battle on the ground. When on the ground, he resorted to using his unique pistol. When he fired, the pistol exploded with roaring flames. The heavy bullet was backed by an abnormally large amount of gunpowder, so much so that he actually managed to kill 2 men with a single shot after the bullet blasted through their bodies. And his skill with reloading was impeccable, even under pressure. He could pour powder and slam down another round while running before quickly lining back up another shot. The battle at the village lasted 4 hours, but this was not a heroic tale of victory. Instead, the Continental Army fought until they fell to the tactics of the British Army. The man with the unique pistol was one of the last to fall. In the end, he had taken 34 people with him, his pistol, aim, and reloading skill carrying him until the end. With that, the memory stopped. In the real world, I could feel a large and heavy object appear in my hands. I saw the pistol in its full glory, with even a few dried bloodstains in the wood. It was heavy, cold, and loaded. And with its appearance, I could instinctively understand how to use it. My arms and hands aimed the pistol just as the man in the memories had. I could feel my body reflexively wield it. I had inherited his skills, the skills infused into the spirit of the gun. Amazing. What is that? Maxwell asked as he observed the pistol in my hand. As I had learned, summoners could conjure spirits from 2 different categories, hot and cold. Hot summons were living spirits like exotic monsters and animals. These were conventionally living beings, and they had intelligence that increased with every level. And cold summons were conventional weapons like swords, spears, and shields. These were inanimate beings. My category was of the second type, and quite unfortunately, cold summons were regarded as the worst type of summons. So not only was I a lowly summoner, but I had cold summons. Thankfully, I knew that these cold weapons were anything but lowly or lacking in power. I gave Maxwell a vague explanation. This is a gun. It fires deadly projectiles, like arrows. I see. This is not a weapon that I recognize, though it looks similar to siege cannons. It's almost exactly like that, except dialed down. Anyway, I've successfully communed with this spirit. Yes, congratulations. Maxwell gave his praise while scrutinizing the pistol. It seems like a decently powerful spirit for your level. One thing, though, I was able to see the memories of this spirit. Is that normal? Memories? Maxwell rubbed his chin. Spirits, regardless of animation, do indeed have what we can consider minds. It has been documented, though rarely, that some cold summons carry with them remnant spirits, most often of warriors from another time or world. This gives special cold summoners some ability as they inherit the skills of the previous warrior. Really? Then why are they still considered the weakest? Because you are inheriting the skill of a warrior, yet not his physique, endurance, strength, or power. You are a glass sword, sharp yet brittle. So even if you inherit the skill of the greatest warrior from another world, you couldn't hold a candle to even mid-level knights, since you lack what truly compromises a powerful warrior, which is the powerful body.
I guess that makes sense. I could understand what he was saying, though it didn't make me feel good. This meant that while I could attain powerful guns, they may not be able to carry me far. But Maxwell only smirked.
Don't let it get to your head now. That logic only applies to normal summoners. With my Call of the Fallen Angel, you will be capable of so much more, disposing of preconceived limiters. You're lucky I even told you about normal summoners, because if you let the biases of normality taint your mind and teachings, then you won't be able to use my call to its fullest extent. So, forget about that.
Oh, all right. His words picked my spirits back up. It seemed there was still more in store regarding this call. So I disregarded what he said earlier. It wasn't much longer afterward that we ended the session. I left from my room with both slight exhaustion and a sense of accomplishment. Now I could properly project and commune with spirits, but perhaps, unfortunately, the time to use them was nigh. It was the next day that Plex called in the few members of his company. This was also when I discovered that there were more than 3 of us. There were 5 of us. Myself, Plex, Libidus, and 2 others. One was Tovex, who I had briefly met alongside Libidus at a bar. The other was a woman who I knew nothing about. You know Tovex, and this is Rayla. Libidus named the woman I didn't recognize. After observing her, I could faintly sense a significant amount of power lurking within her body. I knew immediately that she was a Magus, though I didn't know what type. All I knew was that I would get my ass handed to me if I fought her. The introductions were short as I greeted the 2 of them. Afterward, Plex began a meeting. Not that it seemed important. Everyone was casual. The monthly auction is here, so I have a job as always. We'll be moving things mainly from the Tavera family and the Polaris branch in the Founders Market, but we also have a special order, which is the reason I've called you all here. Plex smiled while taking out a paper and showing us its front. It had a large symbol on it, that of a skull with blood vessels hanging from its bottom, and eye sockets that had chains drooping from them like tears. The trenches have requested our help. Chapter 10. Trenches. Who are they? I didn't recognize the name Trenches, though they seemed to be a mafia of the Founders Market. Plex smoothly answered my question. There are 4 dominating powers of the Founders Market: the Tavera family, the Clockwork Association, a branch of the Polaris family, and the Trenches. The Trenches, though, unlike the others, hold a small amount of territory and basically no organized influence. They're a gang, nothing more than a bunch of bloodlusting freaks who rule a portion of the market through fear and sheer power. Normally, they stay in the dark, making their money mainly through the production of hard drugs, but occasionally they'll step out into the light, as they are now.
Plex waved at the paper. This job from them is rather sudden, which means they're doing something significant. We can expect to see some good stuff at the auction, but first, we need to move whatever cargo they have for us. Naturally, this involves plenty of danger, more so than usual. Simply stepping into their territory is sketchy, so 4 of us are going.
Oh,
I'd like to go.
I'm curious too.
A few spoke their opinions, yet Plex seemed to already know his decision. I'll be taking John, Rayla, and Libidus. Tovex, you stay back on the outskirts of the territory. We may need your support when making our way out.
All right.
When do we start? Right now. Plex wasted no time gathering whatever he needed. The auction is in 2 days, but I want to move whatever bomb the trenches want us to handle as soon as possible. That means we leave in 10. With that, the 4 of us prepared to leave. It wasn't much later that we were on the street. For a while, things were normal. Nothing I hadn't seen several times before. But then, we stepped across what seemed to be the point of entry. Everything suddenly got dark as we left the rest of the market behind. What lay in front of us were ragged stone roads and beat-up buildings. They seemed to be more like shacks as the bristling stench of drugs and chemicals entered my nose. These run-down shacks were ever surrounded and inhabited by nothing but thugs. Not a single person I saw seemed to have any semblance of rationality behind those eyes. It got really bad when I saw an orgy in the streets. If the people were at least good-looking, I could bear it, but the sight of those humans who had their bodies degraded by drugs was unbearable. I put my hand on Libidus's shoulder and closed my eyes, bearing through the stench and letting him lead the way. Oh Lord, cleanse my tainted eyeballs of the horrid sight.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. Couldn't even get to the whorehouse first.
Rayla agreed with me as we continued deeper into the territory. Thankfully, it really was small as we quickly came upon the headquarters. It was there that we were greeted by guards, all of them carrying various creative weapons, such as clubs with teeth sticking out of the wood or jagged cleavers. Still, I could tell that all of them were strong despite their rough appearances.
Well, if it isn't Plex. I had a feeling you wouldn't waste time.
A voice sounded at our arrival, one that was masculine yet carried a hint of shrill madness. A man who was leaning on a tilted and shattered pillar stood. My eyes were immediately pulled toward him, but not because of his appearance. Instead, it was like I could see him in my mind. His body carried with it bristling power, radiating an aura of unhinged psychosis. My hair stood on end as my chest constricted in fear. My breathing turned light as adrenaline ran through my system. This guy was dangerous. It felt like he could jump on me and tear me apart whenever he wanted. It only got worse when he looked at me. It was like his hands were reaching out with his gaze, his sharp fingers sinking between my ribs and tearing my chest open. The pain that came with it was enough to blur my vision.
I didn't realize my body was frozen until Plex stepped in front of me. And with line of sight broken, I finally regained myself. My hand waved, calling upon the flintlock and raising it toward that madman while my breath turned laborious. I heard Plex's voice. "Don't scare the kid, please. He's new." At least he didn't piss himself. Usually when people have their chest ripped apart, they tend to forget to keep themselves together. A feeling of weakness came over me while he laughed. At the same time, I saw Rayla move in front of me, pulling my face with her hand. "You're bleeding. Just focus on me for a second." She raised a cloth to my face, wiping the blood that had started dripping from my nose. Looking into her eyes was a good way to divert my mind from the vivid illusions of that pain. Dare I say it was rather intimate as I felt her hands ensure that I was okay. Still, I felt a bad migraine come on when all things subsided. Not even her pretty face could distract me from that. Usually people wait until the final hour to come retrieve my packages, but you scurried right over here, didn't you? Hell, sometimes they don't even show up. Business is business, Apocryon. I don't discriminate between clients. I guess that's what makes you so amazing, then. That and how prompt you are in responding to my requests. I only had to wait an hour. Here. Looking up, I saw the madman toss a box. Plex caught it, but before he could stash it, Apocryon smiled. "Open it." I don't intrude on the privacy of my clients. What's inside is of no business to me. Well, I'm making it your business. Open it. With the man insisting, Plex could only comply. Popping the lock, he gradually opened the container. The four of us looked inside, and we saw a neat pile of black pills. If not for their uniform shape, I would have mistaken them for small pebbles. Those are neat little things called overkill pills. Eat one and your body will become a torrent of power that amplifies your output by several fold. Warlocks are uninhibited from casting all the spells they can. Knights are spurred by seemingly infinite strength, and even summoners are able to call upon countless spirits. Of course, the aftermath is just as violent as the bestowal. The survival rate is currently 0. Apocryon chuckled loudly in excitement. It was Libidus who commented first. The army is gonna buy the shit out of these. Right? I'm going to be rich! It will multiply the combat ability of our front lines. Just imagine thousands of soldiers taking these pills and massacring the enemy. He laughed maniacally with ambitious words. Plex closed the box at the same time. Then Rayla lifted my slouching body, whispering to me softly. Get ready to go, kid. You know it's going to be rough on the way out. Shit. I cursed while spurring my body. My head throbbed, but right now that was probably the least of my worries. As if reading my mind, Apocryon retrieved a bag from his waist. He smiled at us while throwing it. When Plex caught it,
we could all hear the familiar clangs of metal coin. "Your pay, Sir Delivery Man. 120,000 coin, plus 30,000 for hazard pay."
Holy hell.
I couldn't help but blurt out. 150,000 coin. That was a massive amount of money. How long would it take me to save that kind of coin? Even then, Plex merely gave a courteous smile. "We appreciate the generosity. We will deliver this to the auction house as soon as possible." "I admire the confidence in your ability to make it out of here at all. Well, that is why I called you." Apocrion left with those words, and when he disappeared, I raised my gun. My communion with this spirit gave me the skills of that soldier from the Revolutionary War, so when I saw a man jump at us from atop a building, my arm reflexively moved. Bang! It fired, leaving behind a plume of smoke, and the body fell limply to the floor, a hole through its throat. For a few moments, everything was silent, until Rayla spoke. "That was kind of hot. What was that?"
That was how we negotiate with criminals in my homeland. Fuck! My head hurts. Let's get the hell out of here.
"Amen, brother." Lividus laughed while reaching under his coat, retrieving a metal whip with segmented blades on it. Rayla also took out what looked like a small staff. On its end was an arch that cradled a floating heart that pulsed as if alive. Around it, fancy lines appeared. Plex disappeared while smiling. "I got the money. See you all at the warehouse."
Asshole!
I yelled while reloading. It only took several seconds as I easily retrieved a bullet and powder from the dimension, slamming everything down in the barrel. At that moment, several other of those psychos came running at us from all directions. Lividus lashed out with the metal whip. Rayla cast some spells that spit out sharp blades of air, and I took aim. Looks like we're earning our money today. Ugh. Oh yeah, that's tasty. "Having fun yet?" Lividus snickered while hoisting my arm over his shoulders. He bore the weight of my body as we walked through the Founders Market. One of my eyes was closed, a thick liquid streaming over it. I smelled smoke and my tongue tasted iron. I don't think I've ever been drenched in my own blood like this before. Am I really not gonna die? Don't worry. Rayla's healing is good enough to keep you alive. Trust in my experience. I see. You have my sympathies. I laughed as we arrived at a building. Kicking open the door, Lividus dragged me into a bright area. It looked like a hospital with sterile white tiles and beds. I looked through my one eye as a nurse came striding over. Before she could even speak, Lividus flicked a gold bullion at her. "We both need treatment. A few stab wounds and some blunt trauma. We also have another coming, a woman with red hair." "Understood, sir. Right this way." She quickly led us to a couple nearby beds. Lividus lifted me into it before he set himself down on another. "Help him first." Don't worry, sir. We can help you both. The nurse reassured Libidus, though she did hurry over to my side and pull open my clothes. My body was riddled with lacerations and a few stab wounds, along with huge, nasty bruises on my limbs. The fight out of the trenches was not an easy one. Without Rayla and her healing, I would have died. I killed no small amount of people, but not every shot was precise. Despite the large caliber, those freaks didn't immediately go down unless you hit a vital spot, and smooth-bore flintlocks didn't make any marksmanship easy. If I didn't have the inherited skills from that man, there was no way I'd be here now. After seeing my wounds, the woman reached into one of her pockets and retrieved a red pill. She plopped it into my mouth, the pill instantly dissolving. There wasn't even anything to swallow. Instead, a hot energy spread through my blood vessels. It gave me energy and dampened the pain, even stopping the bleeding of my wounds. At that time, another doctor came over and took a look at me. The man in a white coat laid out a case of tools on a nearby tray. Before he got to work, though, he asked, "Is it safe to put you to sleep, or shall I operate while you are lucid?" I didn't respond, looking over to Libidus. He nodded. "Go ahead and sleep. We're fine." "All right. Then I'll get to work." With that confirmation, the doctor fed me another pill. This one dissolved like the last one, and just like that, I turned drowsy before passing out. When I woke up, my body was racked with a dull pain. When my eyes focused, I turned my head. I could see Libidus on the bed beside me, his back propped up and reading a book. Turning the other way, I saw a red-haired girl asleep on another bed. It was Rayla. I had only known her for a few hours, but my impression of her was good. She was pretty, and unlike the orange hair that was usually associated with redheads on Earth, her hair was actually a blood red. In this world, some people had deep-colored hair like that. While she wasn't jaw-droppingly gorgeous, she was still pretty. She was also mature, perhaps a bit older than me. And, as I had discovered, she could be a bit flirty. It was fun. Her wounds were a bit lighter than yours, but with her healing powers, she'll recover just fine. Yours were still the worst of us. It's good that your body's resilient. Libidus commented. Taking my gaze off the sleeping Rayla, I closed my eyes. Yeah, not like it hurt any less. Still, I don't think I've ever pushed myself like that before. I didn't even know I could go that far. You learn things about your limits during battles like those. They're valuable experiences, so long as you survive them. Oh, also, I looked at Libidus while he smiled. Your cut, 25. Like? Yeah, none of us expected him to pay that much, but hey, we earned it. Just don't spend it all in one place. Right. I was a bit dazed. I just earned 25,000 coin. That was more than anything I had earned up until this point. Oh, we also have more deliveries to do over the next couple days. The auctions are always the time for big business. You can expect this kind of stuff every month, especially when the major auctions come around. Of course, this was a special case. Singular payouts aren't quite as big and not nearly as dangerous, but you can expect to make tens of thousands over a mere 3-day period during normal auctions.
I like this job.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Libidus chuckled and agreed. And not long after, Rayla roused from her sleep. I could see a few lines of stitches on her lithe body, but they had already healed much better than mine. She turned, her eyes focusing on me.
Hey, sweet cheeks, how's your ass?
Oh, God, this is not becoming a thing, is it?
You bet your tight ass it is.
She giggled as I rolled my eyes. One of the several slices on my body happened to be on my butt cheek, which she had to heal so I could keep running. It was embarrassing. Even Libidus laughed. She snickered a bit as I diverted my gaze.
Don't worry, hun. I've healed worse. Besides, you've got nothing to be embarrassed about. You're quite well endowed.
Thanks. So are you.
Oh, cheeky boy.
Her eyes curved as we smiled at each other. A few minutes later, a doctor came over and checked us all out. Once he gave us a painkiller pill and cleared us, we all grabbed our stuff and left. Our first stop was the warehouse. It was there that we saw Plex. But he wasn't in perfect shape. His clothes were bloodied as he slumped in a chair. The only reason we knew he was alive was because he was drinking a bottle of wine.
Oh, you finally all made it.
Are you okay?
I've been worse. Most of my wounds are internal, so I can only rest to heal. Oh, here are your cuts.
Saying that, he took out 3 bags and threw them to us. I caught mine and opened it, seeing 25 gold bullion coins. They were worth 25,000 coin. A stupid grin surfaced on my face. It felt nice, being somewhat rich, and the jingle of gold made my wounds hurt less.
Rayla,
Plex called while taking a swig of wine.
Take John to the Polaris Bank tomorrow and have him open an account. Do it under the company name. He can't be walking around with that coin all the time.
All right.
For now, I just need to head home. Walk with me?
She waved me over while walking out. I glanced at Plex, who seemed to be getting drunk, before striding out with her. We stepped onto the cold streets. Since we always worked at night, seeing nobody out was normal, though the sun was beginning to creep up, signaling dawn.
Where are you staying?
She asked, prompting me to point to the center of the city. The Black Spider Hotel.
You have a room there?
Yeah, the keymaster is letting me stay there until I get into the magisterium in a few months.
I see. I have an apartment that's in that general direction, though I can't say it's as luxurious.
I only had a hotel before, so I understand. I'll walk you home.
Why, thank you. Don't you go getting any funny ideas, though.
She pat my cheek with a coy smile, making me chuckle as we walked. You can kick my ass, so I don't have any plans to.
And if I couldn't, what would you do to me? How might you ravage me with those funny little thoughts?
Hey now, I'm an upright gentleman. No matter how fantastically impure my thoughts are, I wouldn't go ravaging a woman unless she wanted it.
Well, at least you're honest about how horny you are.
She smacked my butt as we arrived at the apartment.
All right. I'll meet you tomorrow at around 6. Since you're already there, just find me at the entrance to the Polaris Bank. Afterward, you'll probably be working with me when we get these jobs for auction deliveries. Flex requires us to work them in pairs for safety.
Okay.
Good night then, John. You did well today.
She ruffled my hair with a surprisingly caring and soft voice. I waved as she disappeared into the apartment. Then I made my way to my room at the hotel.